Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 3. Welcome to our doom loop. And this is our new reality now. It is 9:30 on the East Coast, 6:30 on the West Coast. Let me know that you can hear everything okay, see everything okay, and we'll get going. Okay, I think we are good to go here. So we're all set for a 10 o'clock Eastern vote in the House. That means we're about 20 minutes away from things kicking off here. I will never forgive whoever decided to do a 7 a.m. West Coast vote in the House. But I started this, so I'm going to see it through to the end. But I will resent whoever made this decision for the rest of my life. So, with that said, let's get going. Here's what it's looking like. It's looking like Jim Jordan is going for a third attempt at becoming Speaker. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that an election denier saw the results of the first election where he came up short, saw the results of the second election where he came up even more short, and thought to himself, that is my mandate to keep going. I have a mandate from the people that are around me to lead. They've chosen me. So this is what happens when you embrace election denialism in your conference. You are stuck with election deniers, and that's exactly what Jim Jordan is. Jim Jordan did not have the support on day 1. He came up with 200 votes. He needed 217. On day 2, when it was all about momentum, all he needed was to show that he was moving in the right direction, that he was able to chip away at some of those holdouts and bring those defectors back on. What he did instead was lose votes, losing 20 Republicans instead of 22. So things are decidedly moving in the wrong direction. And so as a result, Jim Jordan has decided to call a third vote, where reporting suggests that he will continue to lose Republicans here, that he should most likely see fewer Republicans support him than did on day 1 and day 2. By the way, what we're looking at right here in this corner is just going to be a preview of Jim Jordan's press conference this morning. Maybe I'll play a little bit of it, but generally the top line from that press conference is that Donald Trump didn't lose the 2020 election and that he should be voted for Speaker because something he has a mandate to lead. So that's pretty much the top line from the Jim Jordan press conference. I know there were folks like, I believe either Ken Buck or Don Bacon, I want to say Ken Buck, who is a Republican lawmaker, who had come forward and said, look, I would consider voting for Jim Jordan if he could just concede that Donald Trump lost the election. So instead, Jim Jordan holds a press conference where he says that there were some major issues with the 2020 election. So doing great, Jim. Doing great. I see you chipping away at those holdouts one by one as we speak. By the way, if you guys want me to answer any questions, you can throw them in the chat. If you're not yet subscribed and you want to participate in the chat, all you got to do is subscribe to this channel and you'll be able to partake in the chat. So we've seen a lot of reporting that suggests that even if Jim Jordan loses this vote, that he may just carry on and hold vote after vote after vote, I guess in an effort to just gain more Republicans by attrition or just wear them down because nobody wants to be voting through the weekend. Although I would presume that even less than that, I would like to host these live streams of Jim Jordan doing this relentless campaign to become speaker. So that's something I have in common with those holdout Republicans right now. All of us don't want to be here humoring Jim Jordan's antics. So do the Republicans, I've gotten one question, do the Republicans have any other possibilities? There is the possibility that they could introduce a resolution to empower Patrick McHenry, who's currently serving as the Speaker pro tempore, to empower him with some temporary status as acting Speaker. There was reporting yesterday that Jim Jordan was in favor of that, which would seem counterintuitive because you've got Jim Jordan who wants to become Speaker, and so what incentive does he have to then empower Patrick McHenry to become the acting Speaker, thereby putting him in a position where he actually has the power that Jim Jordan wants? But again, he's vying to become, and this is a replay here from Jim Jordan's press conference. Patrick McHenry is vying to become the interim Speaker, if it's only for a short period of time. If it's 30 days or 60 days, for example, maybe he'd be empowered to pass some budget resolution. Maybe he'd be empowered to pass foreign aid packages to Israel or Ukraine. I'm not sure exactly. It would depend on the rules of whatever they set out for themselves. But what that would do is effectively give Jim Jordan the time and the space to exert leverage over those holdouts in the background. So right now it's difficult for Jim Jordan because, you know, he's got the eyes of the nation on him. Every time he loses a Speaker vote, it's another blow to him and his efforts and his ego, and probably makes it more difficult for him to move forward because the rest of the Republican conference is saying, what are we doing? Everybody's seeing the dysfunction that we're steeped in right now. Give it up, dude. And so empowering Patrick McHenry for 30 days, for example, would then cement his position as a temporary Speaker, but also give Jordan the space behind the scenes to exert that pressure over the holdouts and try to bring some of those defectors back. And we've seen some of the tactics that he was willing to use in public right now. For example, Sean Hannity was emailing Republican holdouts and asking if they're going to be siding with the Democrats to allow them to take control. Obviously stuff that they would use on the campaign trail against those Democrats or threaten a primary challenge. There have been Republicans who have texted or emailed or called the wives of Republican holdouts. I believe Ken Buck was among them. Let me pull up some. Let me pull up some examples of what I mean. So I'm pulling up some text messages that were sent to the wife of Don Bacon. Here's one. Talk to your husband and tell him to step up and be a leader and help the Republican Party get a speaker. There's too much going on in the world for all this in the Republican Party. You guys take 5 steps forward and then turn around and take 20 steps backwards. No wonder our party always ends up getting screwed over. That was sent to the wife of Don Bacon. Here's another text that was sent to the wife of Don Bacon. Why is your husband causing chaos by not supporting Jim Jordan? I thought he was a team player. Don Bacon's wife wrote, who is this? No response. She then wrote, oh, now you have nothing to say? To which that person replied, your husband will not hold any political office ever again. What a disappointment and failure he is. There was also a text message sent to Representative, I believe it was Miller Meeks, Republican, threatening her. There's been threatening text messages to a number of different Republicans thus far. Marionette Miller Meeks came out and said that she was receiving death threats. Quote, I have received credible death threats and a barrage of threatening calls. The proper authorities have been notified. And so these are the pressure tactics that have been waged by Jim Jordan, by his allies, by Sean Hannity. And so God knows that if he was willing to do this in public, in full view of the public, while all eyes are on him, trying to get the speakership. Imagine what he'll do if he has 30 days or 60 days with no eyes on him, where he could just basically have carte blanche to exert whatever pressure he needs to on his Republican holdouts, on his Republican colleagues behind the scenes, where there's going to be less attention, less focus on whatever tactics he uses. So that's what we can expect on the Jim Jordan front. So if we see some type of resolution empowering Patrick McHenry, just know that that's not a capitulation by Jim Jordan. That actually plays to Jim Jordan's benefit. That will help him in the sense that it gives him the cover he needs to quietly get to work for not just hours before he can figure out how to flip these holdouts, but possibly days or months that he will now have to flip these holdouts. And God knows that, if he's willing to use those tactics in full view of the public, those pressure tactics, imagine what he'll do if he's got 30 or 60 days to maybe prop up a primary opponent, primary challenger for some of these Republicans, for example. There are a number of Republicans, I believe, who won't. There are a number of Republicans who I believe won't be in attendance today. I believe Van Orden was one of them. He voted for Jim Jordan. So that's another vote away from Jim Jordan. Look, at this point, Jim Jordan had 20 defections on day one. He had 22 defections on day two. Momentum in this thing is everything. So if Jim Jordan can't find a way to bring that number back down or try to at least get it lower than 20, 22 at a bare minimum, but lower than 20 because that's what he had on day one, and he continues to move decidedly in the wrong direction, that is only going to continue to hurt Jim Jordan's chances in all of this. Momentum, I said, is everything. And so if you're not going in the right direction, you're going in the wrong direction. And people are going to start to recognize, even those Jim Jordan supporters, that there is no viable path forward for Jim Jordan, and that the optics of failed vote after failed vote after failed vote just puts on full display the incompetence of the Republican Party and their inability to actually govern. We're not talking about like rewriting the tax code here. We're talking about doing the bare minimum of just electing a speaker so that they can get the business of the House started. This is basically the equivalent. Forget acing the test. This is the equivalent of just writing your name on the damn thing. And they can't figure out how to do that. If this was a football team, this is not, forget, again, winning the Super Bowl. They can't even pick a team captain to go out and call heads and tails in the coin toss. That's what we're up to right now. Talk about incompetence. And it wouldn't be so obvious if we didn't just come from a Democratic Congress where the Democrats, with basically the same margin that Republicans currently have, weren't able to pass the American Rescue Plan, the Inflation Reduction Act, the PACT Act, the CHIPS Act, the Infrastructure Law, the Bipartisan Gun Safety Package, reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act, codify marriage equality into federal law, and oversee the addition of more than 13 million jobs. That is what happens when you have a political party in power that fundamentally believes in government itself. But when you have these Republicans who can't even pick a speaker, who are steeped in dysfunction, this is what you get. This is what your tax dollars are paying these people $174,000 a year to do, which is to not even be able to figure out how to get a speaker so that they can move forward with just the business of governing. Again, not rewriting the tax code here. We just want to get things started. We just want to have the opportunity to maybe, pass a single bill. So that's what we're dealing with a Republican majority in the House. Going to check right here to see if we have any update. Again, we have less than 10 minutes here until the House is set to be gavelled into session. Yep, looks like we are still all set for 10 a.m. For anybody just joining right now, if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel and you want to follow along with these live streams for as long as they go, and I think they might be going quite a while because, again, this is the doom loop that we're stuck in right now. Please subscribe to this channel. It's not only the best way to follow along with these live streams, as I said, but it's also a great way to support what I do, and it doesn't cost you anything. It's completely free to follow along with this stuff. So just so that I have something here, I'm just going to just so we have some movement here in the corner. Again, this is an old press conference that Jim Jordan held this morning, but I think it adds to the ambiance of the screen if we have some movement here. But for those just joining, we have less than 10 minutes until the House should come into session, so bear with me here. And we will get this thing going. Again, right now, if you have any questions, you can throw them in the chat, and I'm happy to discuss. I'm happy to talk about them. Here's a question I'm getting a lot. Should Democrats nominate and vote for Liz Cheney? Maybe a few Republicans will join in. I think that there will be no Democrats, who vote for Liz Cheney. It is not the Democrats' job to swoop in and save Republicans from themselves. It's not the Democrats' job to help the Republicans in disarray by figuring out some conservative speaker who might be palatable for them. Republicans campaigned for the majority in the House. They got a majority in the House. Now it is their responsibility to use their majority that they wanted to figure out how to choose a Republican among their own conference, or at least in their own party. It's not the Democrats' responsibility to save Republicans amid their own dysfunction. Democrats will do what the minority party always does, which is to vote for a speaker from within their own caucus or their own conference. And so for the Democrats right now, that's Hakeem Jeffries. They've been united. They're the only party right now in government who's been completely united. But Republicans need to figure out how to be grown-ass adults. They need to coalesce around a speaker candidate and get to the business of governing. If they want to, they might not want to. They might see all of this dysfunction and think to themselves, this is what we want. This is how we're going to show Americans that government is dysfunctional, that it can't work, that we need to shrink it down to the size of nothing, that we need to eliminate the FBI, the DOJ, the EPA, the Department of Education, the Department of the Interior, whatever it is. This actually, in a way, does redound to Republicans' benefit because their goal, for as long as I can remember, is to prove to people that we should shrink the size of government because government can't work. What they're not telling you is that the only reason it doesn't work is because people like them make sure it doesn't work. They break it. So they break it, they point to the thing that they just broke as evidence that it can't work. Of course, what they don't tell you is that it would work if it wasn't for people purposefully sabotaging it, which is what they're doing right now. Again, I just went over this a moment ago, but the problem for them comes that we have the benefit of hindsight of being able to directly contrast what happens when you have a party in government who breaks everything on purpose, like the Republicans are doing now, with a party who, with the exact same majority that the Republicans currently have, were able to pass a whole slew of legislation that actually helped people, that lowered the cost of health care, that brought the cost of out-of-pocket for seniors down to $2,000 a year, that brought the cost of insulin for Medicare recipients down to $35 a month, that finally bolstered IRS funding to catch wealthy tax cheats, that finally gave money, a record amount of funding to combat climate change, that finally got us funding for infrastructure upgrades in this country, rural broadband, a nationwide EV charging network, that finally had some legislation toward gun safety laws. Like, this can work if we try to make it work. But if you have people like the Republicans in power whose sole goal is to make sure that it doesn't, this is what you get. All of which is a very long way of saying, no, I don't think that I don't believe that the Republicans will nominate, I don't believe that the Democrats will nominate Liz Cheney, nor should they. Again, it's not the Democrats' responsibility to come in and find some Republican who might be palatable. If Republicans want to govern, if they want to lead, which is ostensibly what they want to do because they campaigned for a majority, then they have to figure out how to choose somebody who's good for them, who's palatable for them. If they can't do that, that's on them. It's not on the Democrats. Democrats are the only party that's been consistent. Democrats are the only party that's been doing their job. They've had 212 votes consistently for Hakeem Jeffries with no outliers. That is what it's supposed to look like if you want to have somebody lead your party. So if anybody should be making concessions, it's not the Democrats, it's the Republicans. Because there's one candidate right now who's gotten 212 votes every single time. It's Hakeem Jeffries. If anybody should be making concessions right now, it's Don Bacon or Ken Buck or a number of these Republican holdouts, Womack or Granger, John James or Diaz-Balart, D'Esposito, any of these Republicans who haven't voted for Jim Jordan, who are looking for a viable candidate. We've got one. It's Hakeem Jeffries. Is it going to happen? No. But I'm just saying, if anybody's going to be making concessions here, I've got a good choice in terms of one that would probably work. Yeah. Andrew from the chat wrote, did you see one Republican try to frame it that despite getting the most votes multiple times, that Jeffries has, quote, lost 17 straight votes? That's right. Republicans are trying to say that Hakeem Jeffries keeps losing votes, to which my reply would be like, okay, cool. Now do your party, which actually has the majority. How many votes have you guys lost? Because it's not embarrassing that Hakeem Jeffries is not winning the speakership while the Democrats are in the minority. Some news from Jake Sherman at Punchbowl News. In the meeting yesterday between Jim Jordan and the holdouts, close ally Warren Davidson said it's not Team Jordan's fault that the holdouts are getting death threats. They are getting death threats, he said, because they voted against Jordan. Tell you what, I think the least surprising news of my entire life is Jim Jordan and his allies blaming the victims in all of this. So people in his own conference are getting death threats. They said, that's not Jim Jordan's fault, that's your fault. Shocker that the Jim Jordan faction is blaming the victims here when he is very clearly to blame. Where have we seen that before? Okay, I'm checking if we have a stream feed yet. We don't have one right now, but we should have one any moment. So any moment now, the House will start to filter in, I would say within probably a few minutes, 5 minutes or so, the House will begin its business. They'll get gavelled into session. Here's what we can expect today. The first thing that we'll see when the House is gavelled into session is the usual perfunctory stuff. We'll see a prayer from the chaplain. We'll see the Pledge of Allegiance. We will see a quorum call where all members have about 15 minutes or so to show that they're present. After that, we'll know what the threshold is to be elected speaker. The more members who are absent, the lower that threshold goes. I know that right now we do have at least one Jim Jordan ally who I believe went to Israel. I think that's Derek Van Orden. So that's one fewer vote for Jim Jordan. If we had enough holdouts, if we had enough people who weren't present, maybe that threshold can fall enough that Hakeem Jeffries could get it, but very, 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 very unlikely to happen. So I wouldn't pin my hat on that or hang my hat on that one. From there, we'll have nominations. There's been some reporting that Kevin McCarthy will make a nominating speech for Jim Jordan. Democrats will nominate Hakeem Jeffries, and the voting will begin. And we'll be up to vote 3 of Jim Jordan's so far failed attempts to garner enough support to become speaker. There's also been some reporting that these votes will go on through the weekend, which I think is just a direct attack at my soul, if I had to guess. Someone out there is just ensuring that I never get more than 5 hours of sleep. I take that as a personal affront. Okay. Also, I have a big interview coming up this weekend with Jamie Raskin. So again, if you're not yet subscribed to this channel and you want to follow along with that interview with Jamie Raskin, please subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything. It'll also give you the opportunity to follow along with these live streams, which I believe will be going from now until the end of eternity. So follow along and you can watch the circus with me. So far, we don't have any feed from C-SPAN. As soon as we have one, I will flip over to that. So don't worry, you haven't missed anything. It's just a few minutes after 7 a.m. Eastern on the West Coast, a few minutes after 10 a.m. Eastern on the East Coast, where I should be asleep, but I'm not, and I blame that fully on Jim Jordan. Again, you can throw some questions in the chat. I'll do my best to answer them right now. So, do I think Jordan will lose more votes or gain some this round? If I had to guess, I would say Jim Jordan will probably lose some votes. Already his political viability, or his viability in terms of becoming speaker, is definitely suspect at best. He lost votes from round 1 to round 2, so the prospect that all of a sudden he's able to flip some of these holdouts, especially when they're getting death threats or threats against their spouses, just kind of defies logic to me. So no, I don't presume that Jim Jordan will gain any votes. But with that said, I can never predict what's going to happen from one day to the next. I'm always wrong. So let's just see what happens, and we'll know soon enough. In terms of absentees, we do know that at least one Jim Jordan ally, Van Orden, I believe, went to Israel. So I think that that's going to make things a little bit more difficult for Jim Jordan here on day 3 of his votes, day 4 in total. Do I think there's an option for a simple majority vote on the table? I mean, this is a simple majority vote. For Jim Jordan or anybody to become speaker, they do need a simple majority. We're looking at 217 or 218, depending on what the quorum call shows, depending on how many people are present or present in the House, is going to determine how many votes he needs. But yeah, it is a simple majority. That's what he needs here. For those saying, we got one question. I'm confused. I thought Republicans were backing McHenry as temporary speaker. That was, for a brief moment, exactly what the reporting suggested, that Republicans were kind of coalescing around Patrick McHenry as the interim speaker. But right now it looks like things have changed on the Jordan front, and so Jordan wants to just give it a go at trying to become speaker himself. I think he believes that if he kind of empowers Patrick McHenry, that takes any of the wind out of Jordan's sails, and so instead of trying to empower Patrick McHenry to become acting speaker, Jim Jordan's just going to make a go at just becoming speaker himself. Maybe he was able to peel off a few defectors, and he's just like, you know what, let's just try it. But with that said, and this is what I explained earlier here, even if Jim Jordan does ultimately opt to back this resolution to empower Patrick McHenry as the interim speaker or the acting speaker, that's not necessarily a bad thing for Jim Jordan. Right now, a lot of the disadvantage for Jim Jordan here is that with the eyes of the entire country on him, and knowing that we have to get a speaker, and knowing that he doesn't have any momentum, it becomes more and more the pressure on Jim Jordan to drop out and to find somebody who actually does seem like a viable candidate is growing by the day. But if Jim Jordan can empower Patrick McHenry, or the rest of the conference can empower Patrick McHenry to become acting speaker, that kind of relinquishes some of the pressure on Jim Jordan to be elected speaker now. And so it would give him, let's say Patrick McHenry has a month as interim speaker, or 60 days or 90 days. Well, that's 30 or 60 or 90 days that Jim Jordan would then have to flip those holdouts behind the scene, because eventually they'll need a permanent speaker. And so we'll see what happens, and so that's, here we go. I think we are in session here. So I'm going to go full screen on me. And in the meantime, I'm going to pull up the speaker vote right now. Stand by just one moment. Pulling this up as we speak. Here we go. All right, we now finally have some activity. So right now, the House is doing its quorum call. We have about 15 minutes here where everybody will vote present if they're present, and we expect to have just shy of 433 members. I believe a few people are absent. And as soon as this quorum call is over, which happens in about 15 minutes, then we will move forward into the vote. Jennifer in the chat asked, if this continues, do you think there will ever be a point when more Republicans, especially, let's say, McCarthy, will stop blaming Democrats for this? Republicans will never stop blaming Democrats for this. This is very clearly and obviously all to the fault of these Republicans in the House, because they can't figure out how to get out of their own way, coalesce around a speaker candidate, and just vote for them without pointing at Democrats as if it is somehow the Democrats' responsibility to save Republicans from themselves. The minority party does not vote for the majority party's speaker candidate, nor have they ever. When Nancy Pelosi was the candidate for speaker in the last Congress, no Republicans voted for her. And yet Democrats didn't come out and whine that Republicans weren't voting for Nancy Pelosi, because it's not expected for Republicans to come out and vote for Nancy Pelosi. Just like it won't be expected when Democrats retake the majority for Republicans to come out and vote for Hakeem Jeffries. And the very people who are whining that Democrats aren't voting for a Republican are going to then cast their ballots for a Republican. So no, I mean, like they'll continue whining about this from now until the end of time, but it doesn't matter because this is all just bad faith complaining anyway. Republicans know full well that it's not the Democrats' responsibility to swoop in and nominate Kevin McCarthy or Jim Jordan or any Republican. Democrats are Democrats. Democrats are going to coalesce around a Democratic speaker candidate, just like they've done. They've done it in a unifying way, in a united way, rather. They've all voted for Hakeem Jeffries. Perhaps the Republicans can look at what the Democrats did by virtue of figuring out how to choose someone and then vote for him and maybe take their cues from the Democrats. But no, it's not the Democrats' responsibility to save Republicans from themselves. That will not stop Republicans, however, from complaining and pretending that somehow, on some planet, they should be doing that. Thought I would add in a little bit of the din of the House right now, so you can really get a sense of the excitement building, the anticipation building for a third failed speaker vote for Jim Jordan. By the way, for those just joining, if you want to follow along with these live streams as long as they go, which according to my estimate here will be until the end of time, please subscribe to this channel, and I'll just keep doing this until they elect a speaker or until this Congress ends and we get into the 2024 election and we got to choose a new speaker anyway. So whichever one comes first, I will be continuing to host these live streams from now until then. So if you appreciate this analysis, these pre-shows, or the live streams unto themselves, then please do me a favor and subscribe. Again, it doesn't cost anything to do so, but it's a great way to support me and my work. So after enough rounds, and if it gets close to a shutdown, this is a question I'm reading from the chat. If you want to throw questions in the chat, feel free. After enough rounds, and if it gets close to a shutdown, would a few Republicans start voting present to threaten a Jeffries win? I don't know that they would do that. I think they can make the threat, But you got to remember that even despite all of the chaos, the Republican Party is still a far-right faction of lawmakers, and I think the first thing they would do if they do anything to empower or raise the likelihood of the prospect of a Hakeem Jeffries speakership is get primaried. And I think they would get support from other Republican lawmakers, and I think the last thing that they want to do is sacrifice their own seat like, they don't care about governing. This isn't really a priority for them. They don't care if the House doesn't pass legislation. They know that the legislation isn't going to pass anyway. Maybe what they could do is hold out funding for Ukraine, for example, but none of these people are going to really care about holding out funding for Ukraine if it's between that and their own job. They don't want to get primary. They don't want to lose their job. This is about consolidating power for themselves. And so even despite the fact that they're steeped in dysfunction right now, even despite the fact that the optics are terrible for them, the last thing they're going to do is sacrifice their own paycheck so that they can get some movement in the House. Is it embarrassing? Sure. Did Debbie Lesko, a Republican, announce that she was retiring yesterday? Yeah. But the last thing they're going to do is sacrifice the seat that they want in deference to trying to make this thing work, or even worse, nominating a Democrat or helping a Democrat. So to the next question, James in the chat asked, what deal, if any, could Democrats make to those 20 Republican holdouts to flip a Jeffries vote? I wouldn't look toward... I wouldn't anticipate, at least not right now, because, again, anything can happen, but I don't imagine that we're going to see any Republicans do anything to empower Hakeem Jeffries or to threaten a vote for him, because at the end of the day, yes, the House might begin, but they'll become pariahs in the Republican Party. Look what happened to Liz Cheney. Look what happened to Adam Kinzinger. Neither one of them has a future in the Republican Party because they dared not toe the party line. And so that's exactly what would happen here. So right now we have fewer than 10 minutes left in the quorum call. This, again, what's happening right now is just to see how many members are present. With that information, we'll know what the threshold is for somebody to become speaker. So I believe if there's one absence, that threshold is 217, and we'll figure it out from there. But as of right now, Jim Jordan, if there's about 217 votes he would need to become speaker, then he can afford 4 defections from his conference. On day 1, he had 20 defections. On day 2, he had 22 defections. So clearly, things are moving decidedly in the wrong direction for Jim Jordan. And so Jim Jordan saw that and decided, I have a mandate to do this again. I've got a mandate to lead. The people clearly want me. And so here we are on day 3 of Jim Jordan getting farther and farther away from the speakership and yet continuing to force these votes. And hey, by the way, if you're watching right now and you enjoy this, hit the like button. I think that helps with the algorithm or something. I'm not sure, but hit the like button. Here's what I can do right now that might be interesting. In the chat, I'm going to introduce the first poll. So how many votes will Jim Jordan get today? One option will be more than 217, which is enough for him to become speaker. Another option is going to be more than 205, which means that he secured more votes than he's had before. Then we'll do 198 to 204. So that puts him in similar position. 198 to 204 puts him in a similar position, and below 198. So we'll see how much worse Jim Jordan does today, but I just introduced a poll asking how many votes he gets today. So the first option is more than 217, which would be enough for him to secure the speakership. The next option will be 205 or more, which means he's done a lot of work in flipping some of those holdouts. The third option is between 198 and 204, which is roughly where he's been. The first day he got 200, then he got 198. And then the fourth option is below 198, which would show Jim Jordan going definitely in the wrong direction here. Again, he will likely need around 217 votes, depending on how many people are present, to actually become speaker. So vote in that poll. I just threw it in the chat. To be able to participate in the poll, you do have to subscribe. And again, it doesn't cost you anything to be able to do so. Just a few minutes left here in the quorum call. This way we'll know the threshold for how many votes Jim Jordan needs, or any speaker candidate needs, to actually become elected speaker. Usually what happens is we get down to 0 on the clock, and then they take about 5 more minutes for the rest of these people to filter in. I see we have some Jim Jordan cynics in the poll today. Right now we're a minute into the poll. We've got about 5,000 votes. And so far, the prospect of Jim Jordan even exceeding 198 votes seems pretty slim. So almost 60% of respondents to this poll say that Jim Jordan's going to fall below 198 votes today, which is the high water mark from Tuesday's vote. For those asking, present right now is those who have voted present. NV is who haven't voted yet, not voting. So those are just holdouts in terms of who hasn't voted present yet for this quorum call. We've got a few minutes left in this quorum call. They usually let it go for about 5 minutes afterwards because these aren't exactly the youngest, most spry people in the world, and so I think that as they filter their way toward the House chamber, they have a little grace period of about 5 minutes to finally get there and then vote present. And then the party begins. I've been asked, who's option C for Republicans? I don't think there's an option C right now. I can pretty much guarantee you that if Jim Jordan loses this third vote for speaker, it's going to become pretty clear that he's not a viable candidate, and then Republicans will start either floating other options for speaker, or they'll look toward passing a resolution to empower Patrick McHenry, who is currently the acting Speaker pro tempore, to give him some temporary powers that would empower him to maybe pass a budget, pass foreign aid packages to Israel and Ukraine, pass some type of continuing resolution if that's what we need, which would, by the way, help any of these extremist candidates like Jim Jordan, because the last thing they want to do is pass any type of continuing resolution or any budget or any foreign aid package, because that would actually show that the government is functioning. They don't want to spend any money unless, of course, they're in the majority, in which case they're perfectly happy to spend money, and their fiscal responsibility argument goes out the window. And that's why when Trump was president and Republicans had full control of government, they added almost $8 billion or $8 trillion to the national debt. Because fiscal responsibility only pops up when a Democrat takes office. So again, this is the end of the quorum call. There's usually a 5-minute grace period or so for the rest of the lawmakers who aren't currently in attendance to filter in. And
this vote nearing its end here in the House, a quorum call vote for all members to come to the floor as they continue efforts to elect a new speaker. After this, members expected to proceed to the third ballot for the election of the Speaker of the House. Also let you know, among Democrats, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries held a press conference earlier. You can watch that online at cspan.org, and we'll be taking your calls and comments after the vote.
Again, for those just joining, there was some news in the meeting yesterday between Jim Jordan and those 20 or so holdouts. There was a Jim Jordan ally who said in the meeting that it's not Team Jordan's fault that the holdouts are getting death threats. They're getting death threats, he said, because they voted against Jordan. So it's the victim's fault that they're being threatened with death because they aren't kowtowing to Jim Jordan. They're not towing the House Freedom Caucus
You're watching
line.
C-SPAN's live coverage.
So that's the kind of people that these, and the irony here is that this is the kind of behavior that's been emboldened within the Republican conference, within the Republican Party for so long. And then the moment that it flips on them, of course, they'll clutch their pearls. But, threatening violence and threatening death has been a long-standing tradition of the Trumpist MAGA wing of the Republican Party. And so it shouldn't be a surprise that Jim Jordan, who is of that wing of the party, is leveraging these same threats, but now against his own members, because this is the only way these people can show how they get what they want. We have reporting right now that one Jim Jordan ally named Mike Carey is working over the New York Republicans right now on the House floor. That's from Jake Sherman at Punchbowl News. Again, these New York Republicans have been pretty consolidated in their opposition to a Jim Jordan speakership.
Congress are actually in the chamber today, because that will determine how many votes Jim Jordan needs, or rather any speaker candidate needs, to clinch the nomination on the House floor. Of course, you need a majority of the chamber or a majority of the members present to win the gavel. Typically speaking, that's 218 votes. But there are currently 2 vacancies right now. That brings the magic number, so to speak, down to 217. As of right now, we know of one sure Republican absent, Congressman Derek Van Orden, a Republican from Wisconsin. He's currently on a fact-finding mission in Israel, so he will not be present for today's vote. That, if he's the only absence, that's not expected to bring down that magic number, but it'll mean that Jim Jordan will only be able to lose 3 Republican votes rather than 4 Republican votes and still clinch the gavel. Of course, way more holdouts, lawmakers, Republican lawmakers, have said that they do not plan to vote for Jim Jordan and haven't voted for him in the past. So this is likely not to be a successful vote for him. But that gets back to the quorum call and why this is a really important step in this entire speaker landscape.
So what is the number expected of opponents today? Will it be more than we have seen in the last 2 rounds of balloting?
It probably
That's what a
will.
lot of Jordan opponents are predicting. I spoke to Congressman Don Bacon yesterday, Republican from Nebraska. He voted for Kevin McCarthy on the first two ballots. He said he expects the number of Jordan defectors, Jordan holdouts, to increase by 10. So on Tuesday, there were 20.
Let me just say, he started off with 20. The biggest thing on day 2 was to see where the momentum was. If Jim Jordan could chip away at those 20, then things would be going in the right direction. He would basically have every incentive in the world and a mandate to move forward and continue to chip away at those holdouts. On day 2, he actually ended up getting 22 holdouts. And so things were moving decidedly in the wrong direction for Jim Jordan. What that showed is there is no viable path forward. If you have, what do you have, 18 hours to win over those holdouts, and instead of using that time to actually do so, to actually flip any of those people, he lost more, that shows that there's no path forward, no viable path forward for Jim Jordan to become the next speaker. And so if he loses 10 more today, which again, as you just heard here, should, I'm going to use the word should, be a death knell for Jim Jordan's speakership campaign. The only reason I don't think it will be is because the Jim Jordans of the world don't view objective reality or the results of elections as binding in any way if it doesn't redound to their benefit. And so, I mean, this is what you get when you empower election denialists. They're going to deny the results of elections. I mean, this is in his blood. It's actually in the Republican Party's blood. But, it's interesting for those Republican holdouts, all of whom will, jump on the Trump bandwagon because it suits them, because they're just going against Democrats. Well, now they're stuck in this dysfunction because they've proven, the Republican conference has proven, that the only MO that they have is that they'll deny the results of elections they don't like. Well, now they're getting the taste of their own medicine. Now they have to see what it's like to have an election denialist or an election denier within their own conference screwing it up for their own party. Because don't think that this isn't bad for the Republican conference. Don't think that the optics don't hurt these Republicans, these moderate Republicans, or any Republicans. The fact that, it's been more than 16 days now, we still don't have a speaker. This is like basics. This is basically signing your name on the test. Forget acing the test. We're trying to figure out where the Republicans can sign their name, and yet still they can't do that. I made this analogy earlier, but this is the Republican Party walking into the football stadium as if they're going to go undefeated this season. They can't even figure out who's going to be their team captain to call heads or tails to see if they're going to be receiving the ball or kicking it off. We can't even get them onto the field right now. Forget about going undefeated this season. Forget about winning the football game, right? And so this is what we're seeing. This is what you get by virtue of empowering election deniers within your party. You get people who deny the validity of elections. And so far we've had 2 elections for Republicans. They've gotten progressively worse for Jim Jordan, and yet again, he saw these elections that he lost as something of a mandate for him to move forward and continue to try to lead these people who have thus far rejected him. And what I think is going to happen is he's going to get rejected even worse today. Will that mean he gives up? Probably not. Will he see that as a mandate to move forward regardless? Probably. Again, this is what you get when you empower election deniers.
You're busy up there. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's go to your calls and get your reaction to what you just...
Oh, definitely not going to do that. Definitely not going to listen to the calls. I very much appreciate C-SPAN. Do not want to listen to callers. So right now the quorum call is almost done. We've got 15 stragglers. This usually happens toward the end where we wait just as long as the initial quorum call where we get over 400 people to vote present, and then we wait that long for the last 10 or 12. Thank you for those just joining. Again, for people just tuning in, we are on the 3rd day of voting, the 4th day in total of trying to figure out what the hell is going on with the Republican effort to choose a speaker. But this will be the 3rd vote that Jim Jordan has called to try to push forward his bid for speaker. The first day, he was able to secure 200 votes. He needed 217. The second day, he was able to secure, I believe, 198, so he was moving in the wrong direction. Jim Jordan saw that and decided, you know what we need? Another vote. So that's where we're at right now. We are at another vote. A number of people have been asking why Democrats can't work together to try to elect some moderate Republican. The point that I've been making is that it is not the Democrats' responsibility to swoop in and save Republicans. It's not the Democrats' responsibility to vote for a Republican speaker candidate. Democrats have been united behind Hakeem Jeffries. That's their candidate. It is always the responsibility of a party to elect a candidate for speaker of their own party. That's what Democrats are doing right now. The Republicans campaigned for a majority. They got the majority that they wanted. Now it is up to them, not the Democrats, to figure out how to be grown-ass adults, to coalesce around a candidate who can get enough votes, to elect that candidate, and to move on with the business of governing, as is their job. So, no, it is not the Democrats' responsibility to vote for some moderate Republican to move forward. It is the Republicans' responsibility to use their majority that they have, just like the Democrats used their majority at the last Congress and voted for Nancy Pelosi. Responsibility of Republicans to use the majority that they have, that they campaigned for, and that they got to figure out how to get their act together, nominate someone, elect them, and move on with the business of governing. So I don't think that the Democrats have any responsibility, nor are the Republicans entitled to Democratic votes, because last Congress, there wasn't a single Republican who voted for Nancy Pelosi. Just like in the next conference, when hopefully the Democrats retake the majority, there will be no Republicans who vote for Hakeem Jeffries. So the same people who are clutching their pearls, who need their fainting couches right now because Democrats aren't swooping in and saving Kevin McCarthy or Jim Jordan or Patrick McHenry or any other Republican, those people are going to do exactly the thing that they're whining that Democrats are doing, and they're going to vote for a Republican for speaker in the next conference. So do not fall for the bad faith talking points and the fainting spells that are happening on the right. So we are moments away here, moments away. Again, nine lawmakers still have to vote present, and then we can move on with the business of getting this speaker vote moving forward. Let's see if we have some audio
Marked
here.
as present, and then they will move on to nomination speeches, as you've heard before. After that, it will be the roll call vote for Speaker of the House. Tom in Hanover, Illinois, Democratic caller. Hi, Tom.
Hi. So.
Okay. So again, we're just a few minutes away. This is usually the part where it takes the longest, where we wait for these final stragglers to work their way in. If you have questions right now, you can submit them in the chat. Also, for those just joining right now, if you want to continue to participate, to watch these live streams, which I'll host from now until the end of time, which is what it seems like it's going to take for the Republicans to elect a speaker, please subscribe to this channel. It does not cost you anything. It's the best way to support what I do, and I would definitely appreciate it. I also host other content on this channel. I've got an interview coming up with Jamie Raskin this weekend, which I'm definitely looking forward to, so that'll be out on the channel this weekend. I have a legal series that I do with Glenn Kirshner where we talk about all of the prosecutions happening right now, as well as a voting rights series with the top Democratic voting rights attorney in the country, Mark Elias, where we discuss all of the implications of new maps being drawn right now and how many Democratic seats are being added as the result of that. So if you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe to this channel. Yes, by the way, for those asking, there was a resignation announcement yesterday. So that's Debbie Lesko, a Republican, announced she would be retiring at the end of this term. So she'll still be a member of Congress. It's a safe Republican district. It's not going to have any implications. But she did point out that this was the result of the dysfunction in the House and that they can't get anything done. She was just elected in 2018. So it took all of 5 years for her to recognize that really this is all for nothing and that nothing is actually getting done if you're a member of the Republican conference. So just a few moments away, we have 8 stragglers right now who have not come to the floor, during this quorum call. 2 Republicans and 6 Democrats. Okay, so again, for those just joining, if you want to throw a question in the chat, I'll do my best to answer it. And we should just be a few moments away from getting this vote started. Isn't it possible that expanding pro temp powers could be abused? Like a speaker could just put Jordan on a short list and then resign so he can take power. Yeah, absolutely, it could be abused. There was reporting that if there was not a full vote to empower Patrick McHenry to expand his powers as Speaker pro tem, that he would resign. So again, in the same way that Jim Jordan needs 217 votes to become Speaker, any Speaker pro tempore would need 217 votes to pass a resolution to empower them to do more stuff. So right now, the only job of the Speaker pro tempore is to facilitate the election of a new speaker. That's it. If we want to expand the powers of the Speaker pro tem to, for example, be able to pass a budget or be able to pass foreign aid for Ukraine or Israel, that requires a resolution that would need to be voted on by 217 members. I don't know if it's unlikely that Democrats would vote for that. There is a possibility that we can see some Democrats vote for that, knowing that it's more important to keep the government open or to get aid to foreign countries. And so we may see some Democrats actually opt to vote for that, even though they would be in effect opting to empower Patrick McHenry. But at the same time, if Jim Jordan was to put himself on a list to become Speaker pro tempore, we would still need a resolution that requires 217 votes to give him power. And so in the same way that he can't become Speaker without that, it's unlikely that he would be able to become an empowered Speaker pro tempore without those same number of votes. But again, the important part to remember from that, is that any resolution empowering the Speaker pro tem with more powers would also require 217 votes. So it's going to require the same number of votes to actually elect a permanent speaker. So this is not some easier path to consolidating power within this House. Is McHenry voting for Jordan? Yes, Patrick McHenry is voting for Jim Jordan. And he's also come out and said that his goal is to make sure that Jim Jordan becomes Speaker.
Democrats to make their way to the chamber and mark themselves present so that they can proceed to a third round of ballots for the nomination of Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan pushing forward today with that third vote. He also told reporters and members that he would work through the weekend and keep going with more votes to see if he can gain ground here. According to reports on Capitol Hill, however, the opposition will grow today. We heard from Michael Schnell that it was 20 on Tuesday this week, 22 on Wednesday, and today there are reports that it could be 30 plus of his GOP colleagues who vote in opposition to him as Speaker. Jimmy in Buffalo, Independent. Hi, Jimmy.
Okay. So again, we are waiting for these last stragglers. There's the possibility that there won't be, that there will only be 425 members. They're not going to leave this quorum call open forever for those watching and wondering. So we could be moments away from this thing actually starting. If we see that there's only 425 members of the House who are present, that will lower the threshold to, let's see, 213, I believe, with 206 members. That's Hakeem Jeffries would have 206, and the Republicans would need 213. So that would actually fall to the benefit of Jim Jordan. All right, we just got one more Democrat, so now we're down to 5. So, but it would still be 213, I believe. For every 2 members absent, that threshold goes down by 1. So any moment now, we should close this vote and move forward with the actual vote for Speaker. That's what I would expect to happen here. Again, for those just tuning in right now, we are moments away from the House beginning. We've just got another one, so now there are only 6 members absent. As soon as these members come in and vote present, then we can move forward with the business of electing a speaker. What we'll see from here is nominating speeches for both Jim Jordan and Hakeem Jeffries, and then we'll get to the vote. I have a list of all 22 Republicans who defected on the second vote, and so we'll see what happens in terms of more Republicans coming forward, which is what's expected, and putting this thing farther away from Jim Jordan. Again, the first vote, Jim Jordan was able to secure 200 votes. The second one, 198. He's moving decidedly in the wrong direction, and we expect that he'll continue to move in the wrong direction today.
Everyone that is in Washington, all the lawmakers in Washington, in the chamber for this next round of voting for Speaker. We've learned earlier from Michael Schnell, and you've probably heard the reporting as well, that there are 2 vacancies in the House. So the total number of lawmakers in the House of Representatives is 433. But today it'll be 432 because Congressman Derek Van Orden, a Republican of Wisconsin, a Jordan supporter, will not be here in Washington. He is in Israel for a fact-finding trip. Leisha in Derry, New Hampshire, Republican. Hi there.
Okay, so again, we are just waiting for these stragglers to filter in, and then we can get this thing going. I feel like we have been waiting forever. So right now, by the way, we do expect there to be 432 members, so we do expect 5 more. Right now there's 6 absent, so hopefully that number continues to flick downward, and then we can get this thing going. But right now, for those just joining, we are just waiting for just a few members to come in. We're in the middle of a quorum call right now. The quorum call will determine how many members are present, and therefore what the threshold needs to be to actually elect a speaker. We expect that threshold to be, I believe, 217. So, 217 would be a majority. So we're just waiting for just a few more to come in. And thank you to those who've joined. We are already about an hour in. Has it been an hour? Yeah, about an hour into, a little over an hour to this live stream. We started at about 6:45 in the morning, West Coast, 9:45 East Coast. It's now almost 11 a.m. East Coast, and we're still waiting for a full quorum call. Hopefully that they get this thing begun soon. I think that's what we're looking at now.
427 members have recorded their presence.
So
the question now recurs on the election of a speaker. If the tellers will please come forward.
214 is the number that we have to look for. That's what you need to become speaker today. And finally, we're getting moving here. So for those who've joined thus far, thank you for watching here. Please subscribe to this channel if you support this stream and my channel more broadly. It doesn't cost you anything, and I would definitely appreciate it. Again, just hit the subscribe button, and you can stay on top of these speaker votes for as long as it goes on until we finally land on a speaker.
House will come to order. Nominations are now in order. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. McCarthy.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to nominate Jim Jordan for the Speaker of the House. Now, I've listened to the speeches this week, and I can already tell you what my friends on the other side will say using their poll-tested phrases. But let me correct the record. Jim Jordan is an effective legislator.
Jim Jordan hasn't passed a single bill during his time, his almost 2 decades in Congress. A single bill.
To legislate is about more than the name on the bill. It's about reaching compromise and working long hours behind the scenes to get the job done.
Oh, man.
The House will come to order. Gentleman may resume.
When you are the chairman of a committee, you are responsible for dozens of bills passing the House and being signed into law. So let me tell you a few facts that don't come out in the polls. As the leader of the Judiciary Committee, Jim has passed more bills through the House in just 3 years than the entire Democrat leadership team that has their collective 28 years in Congress. Mr. Aguilar has a whopping 1 whole bill signed into law, a post office in San Bernardino.
One more than Jim Jordan got passed.
I guess that's good enough to be caucus chair. Jim Jordan, on the other hand, has a hand in drafting bills like the REINS Act.
Notice that he said has a hand in drafting bills. He has no laws to his name.
And pass H.R. 2, the strongest border security bill this House has ever passed. And many of you know, because you were in the room, watching Jim find compromise. Watching Jim listen to your positions and finding a bill that can pass. And let's put this in reality. We've had large majorities, but we never could pass a border security bill. That takes leadership. Now, they're going to get upset by it. Why? Because every single Democrat
When Republicans had full control of government during the Trump administration, they didn't pass a border bill. They've been wailing about it for decades. They didn't pass anything when they had the
They don't
ability
want
to.
the American people to remember that they voted against securing and keeping a wide open border. They may not want the American public to know the number of people we catch on the terrorist watch list. They may not want people to know what the future holds in the security for our nation based upon their policies. Name me one bill Democrats passed that would secure our border. I'm waiting. You can't, because they haven't. Mr. Speaker, the truth is, if we measure lawmakers by how many bills have their name on it, we are using the wrong measuring stick. Some of my members I know with the most bills to their name are the most selfish. Jim Jordan, on the other hand, is one of the most selfless members I know.
Which is a tortured way of saying he's not passed any legislation. He's like, if you pass legislation, you're selfish. Jim Jordan is
I've known
selfless.
Jim a long time, so I want to do something different. I actually called the freshman members on his committee and asked them, what do you think of your chairman? Here's just a few. I quote, Jim empowers every member of judiciary to pursue what interests them. I quote by another, he lets each of us take the lead on the issues that are important to us, even letting freshmen and junior members take important roles. Another one, he trusts our judgment on how we handle issues and witnesses, and always seeks our input on key issues. Another, as a freshman, he had me lead off a hearing that related to my subject matter expertise, and he goes out of his way to highlight member successes. He is straightforward, honest, and reliable. That is who Jim Jordan is, and that's what being a speaker is all about. Now, some of you might not know this, but Jim and I have a long history. We created because we take our job serious. I first met Jim as a candidate. I traveled to Ohio. I remember pulling up for breakfast at a Bob Evans in Ohio. There was Jim having a meeting, listening to constituents. I traveled with him throughout the day, from Rotary to Farm Bureau, to just listening to people that had concerns. And I watched them, the same Jim Jordan I see today. He was a leader, a listener, and a fighter. We were actually elected to Congress that same year and became close friends. It was a small class. There was only 13 of us. It was one of the smallest Republican classes in modern history. Over time, we took different routes. Jim actually ran against me for leader in 2018. It was a hard-fought battle. But I never once questioned his skills or commitment to this conference or this country. After the race, I became leader, and we had an opening for the ranking member on House Oversight. Jim didn't even apply for the job. I walked into steering. Didn't tell steering. I walked into the other room, and I picked up the phone, and I called Jim. I said, I know you're not running for the job, but I believe in what Jim Collins says in the book, Good to Great. You put the right people in the right seats on the bus. And Jim, you and I may have challenged one another, but you were the right person for that seat. And it was right when you took that job. It was right again when I asked Jim to step up and join the Intel Committee when Democrats put politics over people and turned the Intel Committee into an impeachment committee. It was right again when we asked Jim to step up and be the right person to lead Judiciary Committee as chairman. And Jim is the right person to take that seat behind me to be our next Speaker of the House. Mr. Speaker, we have an important job to do. The American people expect us to focus on the most pressing issues. We've watched what the Democrat majority has done and brought us inflation like we haven't seen since the 70s. We've watched what the Democrats have done by opening up our border, bringing fentanyl, killing Americans each and every day. And now we have a war in Israel. This country is too great for small visions. Trust me, being Speaker is not an easy job, especially in this conference. But I've seen Jim spend his entire career fighting for freedom, no matter what, no matter the odds, and I know he is ready for the job. And so it is my honor to say, as a member of the Republican Conference, I am directed by the vote of that conference to present for the election to the office of Speaker of the House of Representatives the name of my friend, the Honorable Jim Jordan, a representative from the state of Ohio. I yield back.
The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 212, it's a New York area code, and it's our call for a speaker of integrity, intelligence, and inclusion. 212 is our call for a speaker who will protect our children, our veterans, our planet. 212 is our call for a speaker who will grow the middle class, lower costs, create good-paying jobs, and make health care affordable. 212 is our call for a speaker who will secure liberty, justice, and opportunity for everyone. Well, the unanimous call of 212 House Democrats has been answered by our nominee for Speaker, the gentleman from Brooklyn, the leader of our House Democratic Caucus, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries. Leader Jeffries has answered our call, but the majority's nominee is disconnected from the American people and their values. MAGA extremism is designed to divide, and it has broken the Republican Party. Their nominee's vision is a direct attack on the freedom and the rights of the American people, and he's got the record to prove it. The Republican nominee has voted against health care for children, for veterans, even for 9/11 survivors. He has opposed lowering the cost of insulin repeatedly. He wants to cut Social Security and Medicare. Don't take it from me. It was raised on the other side of the aisle just this week as a selling point to make him Speaker. Over his 16 years in the House, the Republican nominee has never supported a farm bill. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means he has turned his back on farmers, on rural communities, and the 11 million children who go to bed hungry in this country. The Republican nominee wants a national abortion ban with no exceptions for rape, incest, or the health of a mother. We want to make our own healthcare decisions in consultation with our families, our doctors, our faith, not with Jim Jordan. The Republican nominee plotted to overturn the 2020 election, traffics in misinformation, and is a true threat to our democracy and our Constitution. I have had the privilege of working here in the People's House for almost 10 years. And I've gotten to know many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. And I know that you hear the same thing that I do. The American people expect us to work together on their behalf. It is not too late for the majority to choose a bipartisan path forward to reopen the House. Take yes for an answer. Every day, the majority chooses to engage in a Republican civil war that is threatening their own members instead of engaging with us in the work of the American people is a day that weakens this institution and the standing of our country. We need a speaker who will govern through consensus, not conflict. We need a speaker worthy of wielding that gavel, a leader who will defend democracy, not degrade it. More than ever, we need proven, patriotic, people-first leadership. And that is why I am proud to nominate Hakeem Jeffries as Speaker of the House.
All right, here we go. I don't presume we'll see any resolution to empower Patrick McHenry. I think this will be just the two of them, but we'll find out in just a second here.
The reading clerk will now call the roll.
All right, everybody, this is it.
Jeffries. Adderholt.
Now, remember, the last vote,
Jordan.
Jim Jordan secured 198 Republicans. He lost 22.
Jeffries.
So we'll see if he loses any more.
Alford.
There's been reports that he could lose 10 more.
Jordan.
The first name to look out for,
Allen.
Don Bacon.
Jordan.
Don Bacon is the first name to look out for.
Allred. Jeffries. Amodei. Jordan. Armstrong. Jordan. Arrington. Jordan. Auchincloss. Jeffries. Babin. Jordan. Bacon. McHenry.
All right, here we go. That's one. One defection already. Next name is Buchanan. Vern Buchanan is the next Republican to look out for.
Baird. Jordan. Balderson. Jordan. Ballant. Jeffries. Banks. Jordan. Barr. Jordan. Bedegan. Jeffries. Bean of Florida. Jordan. Beatty. Jeffries. Bentz. Jordan. Barra. Jeffries. Bergman. Jordan. Beyer. Jeffries. Bice. Jordan. Biggs. Jordan. Bilirakis. Jordan. Bishop of Georgia. Jeffries. Bishop of North Carolina. Jordan. Blumenauer. Jeffries. Blunt Rochester. Jeffries. Bobert. Jordan. Bonamici. Jeffries. Bast. Bast. Bowman. Jeffries. Boyle of Pennsylvania. Jeffries. Burkeen. Jordan. Brown. Jeffries. Brownlee. Jeffries. Buchanan.
Here we go.
Donalds.
All right, another defection for Jim Jordan. Next name to look out for, Ken Buck. Ken Buck.
Buck. Emmer.
Tom Emmer. So that's 3 defections against Jim Jordan. He's gained back none so far. All 3 were defections in round 2. They continue to be defections in round 3.
Bouchon. Jordan.
The next name
Budzinski.
to look out for is
Jeffries.
Chavez de Remer. Chavez
Burchett.
de Remer.
Burchett. Jordan. Burgess. Jordan. Burleson. Jordan. Bush. Jeffries. Calvert. Jordan. Kamek. Jordan. Caraveo. Jeffries. Carbajal. Jeffries. Cardenas. Jeffries. Carey. Jordan. Carl. Jordan. Carson. Jeffries. Carter of Georgia. Jordan. Carter of Louisiana. Jeffries. Carter of Texas. Jordan. Cartwright. Jeffries. Kassar. Jeffries. Case. Jeffries. Caston. Jeffries. Castor of Florida. Jeffries. Castro of Texas.
All right, keep an eye out for
Jeffries.
Chavez de Remer.
Chavez de Remer. McHenry.
McHenry. Okay, so that's another defection. That puts Jordan at 4. I believe.
Shearfillis McCormick.
I believe that's it.
Jeffries.
I believe that Jim Jordan will now lose
Chew.
this ballot. I think he could afford to lose 3.
Jeffries. Siscomani. Jordan. Clark of Massachusetts. Jeffries. Clark of New York. Jeffries. Cleaver. Jeffries. Klein. Jordan. Cloud. Jordan. Clyburn. Jeffries. Clyde. Jordan. Cohen.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Cole.
Next name to look out for
Jordan.
is D'Esposito. D'Esposito.
Collins. Jordan. Comer. Jordan. Connolly. Jeffries. Correa. Jeffries. Costa. Jeffries. Courtney. Jeffries. Craig. Jeffries. Crane. Jordan. Crawford. Jordan. Crenshaw. Jordan. Crockett. Jeffries. Crow. Jeffries. Cuellar. Jeffries. Curtis. Jordan. Davids of Kansas. Jeffries. Davidson. Jordan. Davis of Illinois. Jeffries. Davis of North Carolina.
Again, look out for
Jeffries.
D'Esposito. D'Esposito is the name to
Dean
look
of
out for
Pennsylvania.
next.
Jeffries. DeGette. Jeffries. De La Cruz. Jordan. DeLauro. Jeffries. Del Bene. Jeffries. DeLuzio. Jeffries. DeSagne. Jeffries. Desjardins. Jordan. D'Esposito. Zeldin.
There's another one. Next name to look out for is Diaz-Balart. So far, by the way, Jim Jordan hasn't...
Diaz-Balart. Scalise.
Scalise, there's 6. So far, Jim Jordan has not recovered a single defection from previous rounds. A single one.
Dingle. Jeffries.
The next name to look out
Doggett.
for is Elsie.
Jeffries.
Elsie.
Donalds. Jordan. Duarte. Jordan. Duncan. Jordan. Dunn of Florida. Jordan. Edwards. Jordan. Elsie. Mike Garcia.
There's another one. Again, he still fails to recover a single defection. He's 0 for 7.
Emmer. Jordan. Escobar.
Next name to look out
Jeffries.
for, Ferguson.
Eshu. Jeffries. Espaillat. Jeffries. Estes. Jordan. Evans. Jeffries. Ezel. Jordan. Fallon. Jordan. Feenstra. Jordan.
Again, the name to look out for next.
Ferguson. Scalise.
Scalise. 0 for 8. That's 8 defections now. Jim Jordan hasn't recovered a single defection
Finstad.
yet.
Jordan. Fischbach. Jordan. Fitzgerald. Jordan. Fitzpatrick.
Next name to look out
McHenry.
for, Garbarino.
Fleischman. Jordan.
What a disaster.
Fletcher. Jeffries. Flood. Jordan. Foster. Jeffries. Fushi. Jeffries. Fox. Fox. Lois Franco. Jeffries. Scott Franklin. Jordan.
Oh, we lost Fitzpatrick
Frost.
too.
Jeffries.
So he's lost votes.
Fry.
Jim Jordan
Jordan.
lost another vote that he didn't expect to
Fulcher.
lose, that he hadn't lost before. So now he's going in the wrong
Jordan.
direction.
Gates. Jordan. Gallagher. Jordan.
Look out for Garbarino.
Gallego. Jeffries. Garamendi. Jeffries. Garbarino. Zeldin.
Another one lost. Now we're at double digits, 10. Next name is Jimenez.
Mike Garcia. Jordan. Robert Garcia. Jeffries. Garcia of Illinois. Jeffries. Garcia of Texas. Jeffries. Jimenez. McCarthy.
There's another one. That's 11. So not only has Jim Jordan failed to flip any of the defectors, he's lost another Republican with Brian Fitzpatrick.
Golden of Maine. Jeffries. Goldman of New York. Jeffries.
Look out for Gonzalez
Gomez.
next. Gonzalez.
Jeffries. Tony Gonzalez. Scalise.
There's another one. Now we're up to 12. Next name to look out for, Granger. By the way,
Vicente
Jim Jordan
Gonzalez.
lost.
Vicente Gonzalez. Good of Virginia.
Anybody who hasn't voted, they'll come back at the end.
Jordan. Gooden of Texas. Jordan. Gosar. Jordan. Gottheimer.
Again, the
Jeffries.
next name to look out for is Granger.
Granger. Scalise.
Another loss for Jim Jordan. He's failed to flip a single defector this round. I don't know
Graves
what
of
we're doing
Louisiana.
here. I don't know what we're doing
Jordan. Graves of Missouri. Jordan. Green of Tennessee. Jordan.
Jim Jordan is
Green of
about to
Texas.
lose. Jim Jordan's about to lose the speaker vote more times than Donald Trump lost Arizona.
Jeffries. Green of Georgia. Jordan. Griffith. Jordan. Grijalva. Jeffries. Grothman. Jordan. Guest. Jordan. Guthrie.
Next
Jordan.
name to look out for, James.
Hageman. Jordan. Harder of California. Jeffries. Harris. Jordan. Harshbarger. Jordan. Hayes. Jeffries.
For those watching right now, Jim
Hearn.
Jordan has already lost. The question
Jordan.
becomes how badly he's going to lose from round 2 to round
Higgins
3.
of Louisiana. Jordan.
He already lost, expanded his loss
Higgins
margin
of New York.
by adding Brian
Jeffries.
Fitzpatrick.
Hill. Jordan.
He's on track to lose
Hines.
23.
Jeffries.
Something tells me it'll be more.
Henson. Jordan. Horsford. Jeffries. Houchin. Jordan. Houlihan. Jeffries. Hoyer. Jeffries. Hoyle of Oregon. Jeffries. Hudson. Jordan. Huffman. Jeffries. Huizinga. Jordan. Hunt. Hunt. Isa. Jordan. Ivy. Ivy. Jeffries. Jackson of Illinois. Jeffries. Jackson of North Carolina. Jeffries. Jackson of Texas. Jordan. Jackson Lee.
The Honorable Hakeem
Jeffries. Jacobs. Jeffries.
John James. Look for John James.
Donalds.
Voted for Donalds. That's another loss for Jim Jordan.
Jayapal. Jeffries.
By the way, for those asking why they laughed,
Jeffries.
Darrell Issa, a Republican, I guess was sitting on the Democratic side of the House and voted for Jim Jordan, and so that left people confused and they started laughing. And of course, they're standing now because Hakeem Jeffries voted for himself.
Johnson of Georgia. Jeffries. Johnson of Louisiana. Jordan. Johnson of Ohio. Jordan.
Next name
Johnson of South Dakota.
to look out for,
Jordan.
Mike Kelly.
Jordan. Jordan.
And of course, a lackluster applause for Jim Jordan as he votes for himself. already having lost this vote for
Joyce
Speaker.
of Ohio. Jordan. Joyce of Pennsylvania. Jordan. Cam Lager-Dove. Jeffries. Captor. Jeffries. Kane of New Jersey. McCarthy.
Wow, another loss for Jim Jordan. That's 15. Tom
Keating.
Keene of New Jersey
Jeffries.
voted for McCarthy. So that's another defector that we
Kelly
didn't
of
have
Illinois.
in the last vote.
Jeffries. Kelly of Mississippi. Jordan.
All right, get ready for Mike Kelly.
Kelly of Pennsylvania. Scalise.
There's another one. That's 16. So far, Jordan
Kana.
has failed to bring any
Jeffries.
votes back, and he's lost a few more.
Kiggins of Virginia.
Here's another one.
McHenry.
McHenry, so that's 17.
Kildee. Jeffries. Kiley. Jordan. Kilmer. Jeffries. Kim of California. Jordan. Kim of New Jersey. Jeffries.
Next name to look out for,
Krishnamurthy.
Lolota.
Jeffries. Custer. Jeffries. Kustoff. Jordan. LaHood. Jordan. LaLota. Zeldin.
There's another one. Next name to look out for, Lawler.
LaMalfa. Jordan. Lamborn. Jordan. Landsman. Jeffries. Langworthy. Jordan. Larson of Washington. Jeffries. Larson of Connecticut. Jeffries. Latta.
Get ready.
Jordan. LaTurner.
We have one coming up
Jordan.
right here, Lawler.
Lawler. McHenry.
There's another one. McHenry. So this is 19. 19
Lee
defections.
of California. Jeffries. Lee of Florida. Jordan. Lee of Nevada. Jeffries. Lee of Pennsylvania. Jeffries.
Next name to look out for
Ledger Fernandez.
is Miller Meeks.
Jeffries.
Miller Meeks.
Lesko. Jordan. Letlow. Jordan. Levin. Jeffries. Lou. Jeffries. Lofgren. Jeffries. Loudermilk. Jordan. Lucas. Jordan. Lutkemeyer. Jordan. Luna. Jordan. Luttrell. Jordan. Lynch. Jeffries. Mace. Jordan. Magaziner. Jeffries. Maliotakis. Jordan. Mann. Jordan. Manning. Jeffries. Massey. Jordan. Mast.
Here we go. We're going to get ready
Jordan. Matsui.
for Miller Meeks
Jeffries.
coming up shortly. She would be number 20.
McBath. Jeffries. McCarthy. Jordan. McCall. Jordan. McLean. Jordan. McClellan. Jeffries. McClintock. Jordan. McCullum. Jeffries. McCormick. Jordan. McGarvey. Jeffries. McGovern. Jeffries. McHenry. Jordan. Meeks. Jeffries. Menendez. Jeffries. Mang. Jeffries. Muser. Jordan. Mfume. Jeffries. Miller of Illinois.
Get ready. Miller Meeks coming up.
Jordan. Miller of Ohio. Jordan. Miller of West Virginia.
All right,
Jordan.
She's next.
Miller Meeks. McHenry.
There we go. Another one for Jim Jordan lost. So we are now at 20 defections.
Mills.
He was at 18 at this point, so he is going in the
Jordan.
wrong direction. Jim Jordan has no
Molinaro.
path to become speaker right now.
Zeldin. Molinar.
Oh, I think we just had another one.
Jordan.
We did just have another one. I
Mooney.
think it was Molinaro.
Jordan. Moore of Alabama. Jordan.
Yeah,
Moore
Molinaro.
of Utah.
Wow.
Jordan.
That's another defection.
Moore of Wisconsin. Jeffries. Moran. Jordan.
I believe Jim Jordan's lost 3 more
Morelli.
from the last vote.
Jeffries. Moskowitz. Jeffries. Moulton. Jeffries. Mervan. Jeffries. Mullen. Jeffries. Murphy. Jordan. Nadler. Jeffries. Napolitano. Jeffries. Neal. Jeffries. Nagoose. Jeffries. Nails. Jordan. Newhouse.
Next name to look out for,
Jordan.
Rutherford.
Nickel. Jeffries. Norcross. Jeffries. Norman. Jordan. Nunn of Iowa. Jordan. Obernolte. Jordan. Ocasio-Cortez. Jeffries. Ogles. Jordan. Omar. Omar. Jeffries. Owens. Jordan. Pallone. Jeffries. Palmer. Jordan. Panetta. Jeffries. Pappas. Jeffries. Pascrell.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Payne. Payne. Pelosi. Jeffries.
Okay, next name to look out for, again, is
Peltola.
Rutherford. Rutherford.
Jeffries. Pence. Jordan. Perez. Jeffries. Perry. Jordan. Peters. Jeffries. Pedersen. Jeffries. Pfluger. Jordan. Phillips. Jeffries. Pingree. Jeffries. Pocan. Jeffries. Porter. Jeffries. Posey. Jordan. Presley. Jeffries. Quigley. Jeffries. Ramirez. Jeffries. Raskin. Jeffries. Reschenthaler. Jordan. Rogers of Washington. Jordan. Rogers of Alabama. Jordan. Rogers of Kentucky. Jordan. Rose. Jordan. Rosendale. Jordan. Ross. Jeffries. Rouser. Jordan. Roy. Jordan. Ruiz.
Get ready for Rutherford.
Jeffries. Rupersberger. Jeffries. Rutherford. Scalise.
There's another one. That's 22.
Ryan. Jeffries. Salazar.
Jim Jordan has lost
Jordan.
every vote from the previous vote,
Salinas.
as well as 3 more.
Jeffries. Sanchez.
Next name to look out
Jeffries.
for is Simpson.
Santos. Jordan. Sarbanes. Jeffries. Scalise. Jordan. Scanlon. Jeffries. Schakowsky. Jeffries. Schiff. Jeffries. Schneider. Jeffries. Skolton. Jeffries. Schreier. Jeffries. Schweikert. Jordan. Austin Scott. Jordan. David Scott. Jeffries. Scott of Virginia. Jeffries. Self. Jordan. Sessions.
Next name again, Simpson.
Jordan.
Look out for Simpson.
Sewell. Jeffries. Sherman. Jeffries. Sherrill. Jeffries. Simpson. Scalise.
There's another one. That's 23. Again, Jim Jordan has failed to claw back any of the defectors. Not a single defector has come back to Jim Jordan's camp.
Smith of Missouri. Jordan.
Next name
Smith of Nebraska.
will be Stauber.
Jordan. Smith of New Jersey. Jordan. Smith of Washington. Jeffries. Smucker. Jordan. Sorensen. Jeffries. Soto. Jeffries. Spanberger. Jeffries. Sparts. Jordan. Stansbury. Jeffries.
Get ready for Stauber is coming up.
Stanton. Jeffries. Stauber. Westerman.
There's another one. That's 24. Can we get 25? Jim Jordan has already lost 2 more than the previous round. He still has Womack coming up. And by the way,
Steele.
goes without saying, but Jim Jordan has absolutely lost this vote.
Stefanik.
We will have to go to a 4th speaker vote.
Style. Jordan. Stubbe. Jordan.
What an
Stevens.
abject humiliation. An abject
Jeffries.
humiliation for Jim Jordan.
Strickland. Jeffries. Strong. Jordan. Swalwell. Jeffries. Sykes. Jeffries. Takano. Jeffries. Tenney. Jordan. Tanadar. Jeffries. Thompson of California. Jeffries. Thompson of Mississippi. Jeffries. Thompson of Pennsylvania. Jordan. Tiffany. Jordan. Timmons. Jordan. Titus. Jeffries. Talib. Jeffries. Takuda.
Jeffries will very soon pass 200.
Jeffries. Tonko. Jeffries. Torres of California. Jeffries. Torres of New York. Jeffries. Trahan. Jeffries. Trone. Jeffries.
The next name to keep out an eye for
Turner.
is Womack.
Jordan.
Womack would bring us to 25.
Underwood. Jeffries. Valadeo. Jordan.
We're getting there.
Van Drew. Jordan. Van Dyne. Jordan. Van Orden.
Not present today.
Van Orden. Vargas. Jeffries.
And that's 200 for Hakeem Jeffries. 200.
Vasquez.
A number that Jim Jordan will not
Jeffries.
break today. Jim Jordan won't even break
VC.
200. Hakeem Jeffries is already there.
Jeffries. Velasquez. Jeffries. Wagner. Jordan. Wahlberg. Jordan. Waltz.
Get ready for Womack.
Wasserman Schultz. Jeffries. Waters. Jeffries. Watson Coleman. Jeffries. Weber of Texas. Jordan. Webster of Florida. Jordan. Winstrup. Jordan. Westerman. Jordan. Wexton. Jeffries. Wild. Jeffries. Williams of Georgia. Jeffries. Williams of New York.
All right,
Jordan.
we're coming up to Womack.
Williams of Texas. Jordan. Wilson of Florida. Jeffries. Wilson of South Carolina. Jordan. Whitman. Jordan. Womack.
Do we have 25?
Scalise.
Yep, we do. That's 25 defectors, up from 20 on day 1, 22
Yakum.
on day 2, and now
Jordan.
25 on the third vote. An
Zinke.
unmitigated, abject humiliation for Jim Jordan. 25 defectors against him. He has anti-momentum. He is radioactive right now. So what they're going to do right now is go back and call just a few more names of people who haven't voted, and then we'll get the final count. And then comes the exciting part, because then we find out what's going to happen next. We find out what happens next. So stick around if you're watching right now. And by the way, if you're not yet subscribed to this channel, please subscribe to stay with me as I continue to live stream the doom loop that we're stuck in right now. So if you're not yet subscribed, please throw me a subscribe. It costs nothing. It's the best way to support what I do, and the best way to stay on top of these live streams. Couple more names they're going to call, and then we'll get the final count, and then we find out whether
The
we're going
reading
to get a
clerk will
fourth
now call
vote.
the names of the members who did not answer the first roll call.
Bast. Jordan.
I don't even think Jordan will hit
Fox.
196.
Jordan. Vicente Gonzalez. Vicente Gonzalez. Hunt. Hunt.
Does Jim Jordan even hit 196 today? Actually, I don't think there's a way he does.
Payne. Payne.
Does Jim Jordan hit 195 today?
Van Orden.
He's not there.
Van Orden.
Does Jim Jordan leave with 194?
If there are members, any members who did not answer the call of the roll, they may come to the well and vote at this time.
Wow, I think Jim Jordan ends this vote with 194. Day 1, he had 200. Day 2, he had 198. Day 3, 194. He went from 20 defections to 22 defections to now 25 defections. Any way you cut this, an abject humiliation for Jim Jordan. I don't see a planet on which he goes for a fourth vote, but then again, it's Jim Jordan we're talking about, who isn't exactly known to accept the results of elections. So we may very well see a fourth attempt by Jim Jordan. What we may see now is They'll do the final count for these votes. This will take a few minutes, and then we'll find out whether Republicans are going to go into recess or whether one of these Republican representatives is going to introduce a resolution to then empower Patrick McHenry to have the ability to serve in some interim capacity as Speaker pro tempore, and he would have the ability to maybe pass budgets, maybe pass Ukraine aid, Israel aid, some foreign aid packages. Again, that depends on what rules they put forward. Or they could try to consolidate around another speaker candidate. But clearly, after what we've seen right now with Jim Jordan, it does not seem that there is a viable path on God's green earth that Jim Jordan will have enough votes that it takes to become speaker here. So we'll stay on top of this. Again, if you're watching right now, stick around, because what we're going to find out in the next few minutes is going to determine where we go from today. And for those who are watching who aren't yet subscribed to this channel, please subscribe so you can support this live stream and my channel. It doesn't cost you anything, but I'll continue to live stream this speaker doom loop that we're in right now until we finally have some type of a resolution here. So what they're doing right now is doing the final tally. They'll formalize it, and then we find out what happens next. This is certainly the fewest votes that any speaker candidate has gotten this century. It's been over 100 years since any speaker candidate got this few votes. This may be the fewest votes ever. I'll find that out right now. Oh boy. So here's an interesting tidbit. Oh man. Back in 1923, Democrat Finis Garrett from Tennessee got 195 votes. Republican Frederick Gillett got 197. This may be the fewest votes that any speaker candidate has gotten in history, with 194. Just sneaking in under Finis Garrett from Tennessee's 9th from 1923 on the first ballot. So congratulations to Jim Jordan on making history right now in what I believe is the fewest votes that a candidate has ever gotten for speaker. I don't know besides 1923 whether there were any other candidates who got fewer than Jim Jordan, but I can tell you right now that he just dethroned Finis Garrett from over 100 years ago, 1923, on the ballot to become speaker. He got 195, Jim Jordan is at 194. Just a historic, unprecedented humiliation for Jim Jordan. But hey, I'm sure he's going to just accept these election results and move on, because that's what the House Freedom Caucus and these extreme MAGA Republicans do, right? So stick around if you're watching right now. We will find out momentarily what the final vote tally is, although we can see the unofficial tally on the screen right now. And from there, we wait and see what the Republicans are going to do, whether they're going to immediately introduce a resolution to empower someone like Patrick McHenry, who's currently serving as the Speaker pro tem, to have more power as some type of an acting or interim Speaker, or if they're going to bring forward another candidate who they think could serve on a permanent basis. So we'll find that out momentarily. So if you're watching, keep watching, because we'll know what's going to happen next in just a few moments. If you're in line, stay in line. But man, for those who've just watched what happened, we have a historic failure by Jim Jordan. You had to go back to 1923 to find a Speaker candidate who got this few votes, and Jim Jordan just exceeded the number of votes against him. So again, back in 1923, there was a candidate who got 195 votes on the ballot. That was Finis Garrett, who did not become Speaker, shockingly enough to say. Jim Jordan just got 194, so he just snuck in there under the wire. Another big L for Jim Jordan today, making history as the biggest failure of a Speaker candidate, I believe, in American history. Certainly in modern American history, but I believe in the entire history of our country, we haven't had a party's Speaker candidate get fewer than 195 votes. Yikes. Needless to say, Jim Jordan has lost ground in his bid to become Speaker. The first day he had 200 votes in favor. The next day he had 198. Now he has 194. You don't have to be a math genius to recognize that Jim Jordan is not going in the right direction. The trajectory is not in Jim Jordan's favor here. He needed to be clawing back some of those votes. Instead, he lost 3 more Republicans. I believe it was Tom Kaine in New Jersey, Brian Fitzpatrick in PA, and who else was it? Molinaro from New York as well. So a bad, well, I wouldn't call it a start, but a bad continuation for Jim Jordan, as now we are on the 3rd attempt for him to become Speaker. I feel like it's safe to say that Jim Jordan could recognize by now that there is no viable path forward, but then that would be to ignore who Jim Jordan is at his core, which is an election denier. If he doesn't like the results of an election, he ignores them. He sees 1, then 2 election losses, and he views that as a mandate to move forward.
Working to officially tabulate the results of this 3rd round of votes for Speaker of the House. Jim Jordan not getting the votes that he needed. The numbers right now looking like 210 Democrats voting for Hakeem Jeffries. They are missing 2 of their members. 194 for Jim Jordan. 25 Republicans defecting. That number has grown since earlier in the week when there were 20 on Tuesday, 22 on Wednesday, and on this Friday morning, 25 of his GOP colleagues voting against his nomination.
All right, so what we're looking for now is the official tally. This should just take a couple of moments, and then we'll find out the big news here that we're waiting for, which is what happens next. For those asking, how did Patrick McHenry vote? He voted for Jim Jordan. Why did the Democrats get only 210? They're missing 2 members right now. Not that it would matter, because they're either going to get 210, 211, 212. It's not going to matter. They need 217, and they didn't have those votes today. Or maybe the threshold was a little lower because we had more members absent. But either way, Jim Jordan didn't get what he needed. He's moving in the wrong direction, and perhaps he'll view this as the proof that he needs to recognize that there is no viable path forward for Jim Jordan as Speaker. So we'll await the final count here. Again, for those who haven't yet subscribed to this channel, if you want to stay on top of this Speaker vote as it continues in perpetuity for the end of time, please subscribe to this channel. And this is our lives now. We just watch Republicans vote for Jim Jordan, and he gets fewer votes, and that's it. And then we do it again and again. Jim Jordan, like I said before, I believe is on track to lose more speaker votes than Donald Trump lost in Arizona, which is no small feat. He's already made history here, dethroning Finis Garrett in 1923 as the previous major political party candidate to secure less than 195 votes as Speaker, with Jim Jordan now at 194. So unless he has a humiliation kink, which I wouldn't put past him, this may be the last time we see Jim Jordan put his name forward for Speaker. What we also may see is him vote to empower Patrick McHenry with some temporary Speaker powers to be interim Speaker. And that would buy him, depending on how much time they give him to do that, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is, that might give Jim Jordan time behind the scenes to continue to whip votes, to lobby those holdouts, and hopefully turn some of those Republican defectors. Although, if he hadn't been able to do it after day one, and he did even worse after day two, I don't know what Jim Jordan can do behind the scenes in the next 30 days, other than continue to threaten these lawmakers and sick his mob on their wives and their families like he's done now, but that doesn't seem to be working. It seems to be having the opposite effect. So we'll see what happens on that front. But again, it does not surprise me that they would use these threat tactics, because this is what MAGA Republicans have been groomed to do, to recognize that, okay, using the threat of violence is going to get me what I want. And by the way, let me know in the chat where everybody's watching from. I'm curious to see if we have any fellow West Coasters here who've been up since the butt crack of dawn watching this thing. We started this stream just after 6:30, I believe. 6:30 a.m. West Coast time, 9:30 East Coast time. It's now just after noon East Coast, so we've been at this for a while here, but worth it to see Jim Jordan kind of make once-in-a-century history. Okay, so we do have plenty of West Coasters. All right, let's get the official count here.
The House will come to order. The tellers agree in their tally that the total number of votes cast is 429, of which the Honorable Jim Jordan of the state of Ohio has received 194. The Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 210. The Honorable Patrick McHenry of the state of North Carolina has received 6. The House will come to order. The House will come to order. The Honorable Baron Donalds of the state of Florida has received 2. The Honorable Tom Emmer of the state of Minnesota has received 1. Lee Zeldin of the state of New York has received 4.
So now we find out what happens next here, so stand by.
The state of Louisiana has received 8. The Honorable Mike Garcia of the state of California has received 1. The Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California has received 2. The Honorable Bruce Westerman of the state of Arkansas has received 1. No person having received a majority of the whole number of votes cast by surname, a speaker has not been elected. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the chair declares the House in recess, subject to the call of the chair.
All right, so now we find out what happens next. I'll keep an eye on the news here, and I will let you know as soon as we have any indication of when the next vote is going to be, if it'll be today. So just to give a brief overview, first of all, for anybody who's been watching or who's stuck around since the beginning or who's just joining now and wants to stay on top of this stuff, Please make sure to subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything to do so, but it's the best way to not only support me, but to stay on top of these speaker votes as they continue to progress. So we should find out at some point in the next little while what we're going to see in terms of when that next vote will be. But just to give a lay of the land, day one, Jim Jordan had 200 votes with 20 Republican defectors. Day two, he had 198 votes with 22 defectors. Today, he had the opportunity, after almost 48 hours of being able to lobby his conference and bring back those holdouts to come to his side. What he did instead is lose 3 more Republicans while not being able to bring back a single one of those 22 defectors from last time. So now we're at 25. I cannot see a planet on which there is a viable path forward for Jim Jordan to become the next speaker. So what we can expect to see now is either Republicans will present an alternative to Jim Jordan to become the permanent speaker, or they'll put forward some type of resolution that would empower Patrick McHenry to serve as interim speaker for, I don't know, maybe 30 days, maybe 60 days, maybe 90 days, and that would allow him the power to pass some type of continuing resolution to pass so that we can keep the government open, so some budgetary powers, maybe some foreign aid packages, and from there, that would actually, in a way, redound to Jim Jordan's benefit, because it would give him the time and the space to be able to work over those Republican holdouts behind the scenes. Right now, it's difficult for him to do because all eyes are on him right now, and all eyes are on the fact that he isn't able to secure enough votes to become speaker, and so the humiliation just builds up, and the optics are not good for Jim Jordan. He has anti-momentum right now. Forget about no momentum. Momentum is going the opposite way. So what we're expecting to see is, if he does vote to empower Patrick McHenry, and if Patrick McHenry does get adequate votes to become interim speaker, that isn't necessarily a death blow to Jim Jordan, because he'll use that time, whatever it is, months, days, whatever it becomes, to try to win over those holdouts. And of course, there's that Fox News campaign to try to pressure people to vote for Jim Jordan as well, because you've got the Sean Hannitys out there who are just as far right as Jim Jordan, and who would love nothing more than to see one of their allies, another flamethrower, ascend to the speakership position, the second in line to the presidency as Jim Jordan. Of course, the danger of such a move can't be overstated. I mean, with Jim Jordan, we're talking about somebody who's failed to pass a single piece of legislation into law during his entire almost 2 decades in Congress. He has authored legislation, draconian legislation, like a nationwide ban on abortion. He's also, supported Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. He is an insurrection sympathizer. And of course, he's best known for helping cover up the purported sexual abuse of more than 100 student athletes during his time as assistant wrestling coach at OSU. So for the same party that clutches their pearls and calls everybody else groomers and claims that the Democrats aren't protecting children, you've got them elevating someone like Jim Jordan, or attempting to elevate someone like Jim Jordan, to the highest ranks of power in the Republican Party, following a long line of speakers who've done the exact same thing. And I'm talking about Dennis Hastert, who also went to prison for financial crimes related to the molestation of young teenage boys, while he was, who were also wrestlers. So at least, if nothing else, they're consistent. Let's see if we have any quotes from these Republican lawmakers here.
A person who leads through strong-arm tactics. I think that Jim Jordan is being unfairly blamed by some for the tactics of outside groups that Jim Jordan has no control over. We want to meet with our colleagues. We want to understand how they can get to a comfort level with Jim Jordan. We in January allowed the ascent of Kevin McCarthy to the speakership. We had specific goals. When those promises were made to meet those goals, we were willing to work with the team. So our call is to our fellow Republicans to vote with the team, work with the team, help us elect a Republican speaker.
And hold on real quick, how can you say that these are strong-arm tactics? How can anybody say strong-arm tactics? We've had, 3 votes in the entire week? Back in January, you guys remember, it was vote after vote after vote after vote. Jim holds 1 vote, and then he goes and he tries to talk to these folks. And here's the other thing about Jim Jordan. I hear a lot in this conference about, you got to support the team, you got to support the conference, you got to support the majority. What do the American people say? Are you guys hearing what the American people are saying? He is the #2 most popular Republican in the entire country. The vast majority of Americans want Jim Jordan. And one of the problems in this town is a lot of the representatives up here don't really care what the American people have to say about it.
American people certainly say they want a speaker.
Kevin McCarthy back in January only lost votes for 9 rounds. It wasn't until the 12th round that he gained even 1 vote. Jim Jordan has had 3 votes. He's got roughly 200 Republicans supporting him. And so I guess it sounds better to smear Jim Jordan, to blame him for the actions of others that he does not control, than to tell your constituents that you don't want to vote for the person that they want to lead the party, and that you want to vote to continue to represent the special interests in Washington instead of the grassroots Republicans who gave us the majority.
It's heading the wrong way.
I just pointed out to you, Kevin McCarthy lost votes for 9 rounds. Jim Jordan has been voted upon for 3 rounds. Kevin McCarthy did not gain 1 vote until the 12th round, when 14 out of 20 members flipped their vote. And yet folks want to report that, hey, Jim Jordan has no path to victory after 2 rounds, now 3 rounds. We believe that if we keep voting, Jim Jordan will be elected Speaker.
And let me make a point. This is not about us. This is bigger than us. That's why we're offering ourselves on this thing. So I think that needs to be made clear. It's not about the 435. It's about the 8 of us saying this is what we'll do.
Are you concerned at all that what's going on? Some in your party will try to work with Democrats to pass a resolution to empower the Speaker pro tem.
That's always an option, but I just don't see that. And why would Hakeem Jeffries, who's on record of denying multiple elections, why would he, if he had that working in secret, why would he disclose that to the public? That's just to cast doubt. And you know, it's Pavlov's dog. He rings the bell, and everybody comes run salivating. And it's just not accurate.
Republicans across the country should take note that when Patrick McHenry read his own number of votes that he received, the Democrat side of the chamber cheered roundly for that. So,
would you support a resolution to remove Patrick McHenry as Speaker pro tem?
I think he's doing a fine job as Speaker pro tem. He needs to stay in that role and do his one job, which is also our primary job, which is elect the Speaker.
And by the way, Speaker McHenry pro tem deserves credit for resisting calls to expand the pro tem role beyond how it is contemplated in the Constitution. Patrick McHenry has earned our respect for having abided by the limitations on the power of the pro tem position, and for that, he should be commended.
And just to clarify, what are the things that you're willing to do? You said remove from conference, remove from committees. What is that?
Well, you know, we're eager to better understand how those who are unwilling to vote for Jim Jordan would react to our willingness to accept some consequence. We violated no rules of the House. We violated no rules of the House Republican Conference.
That were voted on unanimously.
Yeah, but if
Kevin McCarthy voted for these rules.
Yeah, but if what people need is to see, you know, the 8 of us wrapped on the knuckles in order to get on to the business of governing, what we're saying is we're open-minded to that.
We believe what we did was right. We stand behind what we did. We believe the Republican Party, the Republican Conference needs to change. Congress needs to change. However, if we're the reason that the conference can't come together and elect our Speaker designee, then we're willing to submit ourselves to whatever consequence.
Committee assignments.
Well, we've said if you were removed from the conference, I suppose that would mean that you would lose your committee assignments, but we would remain proud members of the Republican Party as nominated by our respective districts. We share the Republican Party's stated objectives and values, but we're telling the conference if they want to bring consequence to us individually, and if that would help them to elect Jim Jordan as Speaker, then we're willing to submit.
You mentioned that they should just continue to keep voting, that Mr. McCarthy went 15 rounds and he was inevitably elected Speaker.
We need to keep voting.
Now, Mr. Nels came out here and said that his 4th vote is going to be for Mr. Trump. Are you worried that more of your colleagues are going to flip in some other direction?
Well, I'm pretty sure Troy Nels isn't going to stand between Jim Jordan and the speakership. I've got a pretty high confidence.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all so much.
What about the threat?
Well, I mean that's the goal with this letter.
Some breaking news there on Capitol Hill. Tim Burchett, Eli Crane, Bob Good, and Matt Gaetz, 4 of the 8 who voted to oust Kevin McCarthy from the speakership, saying they're offering up a punishment of themselves if that would help the conference come together behind Jim Jordan. They would accept a censure. They would accept removal from the conference, which would remove them from committees. And you heard them vowing to continue to support the Republican Party in votes. Let's
How selfless of them. They said, if we can just get Jim Jordan, we would accept a censure, which effectively does nothing.
Well, certainly the pressure some members are feeling for not voting the will of the people they represent, for not voting the will of their voters and their constituents. They're feeling that pressure, as they should. The people want Jim Jordan, and that's who they want. But instead, some of our colleagues are putting personal politics ahead of the people, and we have a huge opportunity to change the direction of our conference.
Ironic that they say personal politics when Jim Jordan's been repudiated 3 times, but because of his personal ambitions, he wants to remain in his efforts to become speaker. That's not personal, but any member who votes against him is putting their personal politics. It's funny how that works out. It's convenient.
Are voting their conscience. I mean, how do you say they have to square that away with their voters? But what about the people receiving death threats? I mean, I received 4 death threats last weekend. I received another one the week before that, another one 2 weeks before that. I've had my house vandalized 3 times in 3 years. I've had my car keyed twice. In fact, the truck I drive at home is still keyed because I haven't had time to get it fixed. I've had 2 family members this summer had their cars broken into. My 80-year-old parents have been threatened. Their lives have been threatened multiple times. I've had siblings whose lives have been threatened. My fiance has had threats. This is something that I've been dealing with for 3 years. It breaks my heart that some of my colleagues are going through this. I go through this almost every single day. I have to carry a gun when I'm home. When I do public events, I have to have security because of the death threats that I receive. And it's been going on for years, and it's a reflection of the times that we're in. I see it from both sides of the aisle, and it breaks my heart, which is why I just want a leader who's going to be honest, who's going to tell the truth, and is going to work hard for the people of this country.
But do you think that people are behind Jim Jordan, but the numbers are only getting worse for him? So what gives you evidence that people are actually behind him?
If you look at your constituents who are calling into your office, the people that support Jim Jordan, it's overwhelmingly positive, and they'll have to square that away with their voters and with their constituents. That's not on me, that's on them. I would like us to see us come together. I don't think we should leave this place until we elect a speaker. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Nancy Mace, Republican of South Carolina, talking to reporters there. She is in Jim Jordan's camp. She and other Republicans are...
Okay, so that's where we're at right now. We have a few Jim Jordan apologists who are coming out and trying to blame everybody but themselves, but the fact that Jim Jordan is not a viable candidate for speaker. And by the way, if there are a number of Republicans who don't think that Jim Jordan is an adequate selection for speaker, that might be owed to the fact that right now the Republican Party has 18 Republicans currently serving in districts that Joe Biden won. If they think that Jim Jordan thinks that any of those Republicans want to go back to their districts and say, hey, I know you guys voted for Joe Biden in 2020 over Donald Trump, but how about you re-elect me after having voted to empower the biggest Donald Trump ally in all of Congress to be second in line to the presidency? I mean, give me a break. These people are pretending that they have no idea why this happened, and yet all they have to do is look at have the most basic understanding of what electoral politics looks like.
Focusing on the rear view mirror and look forward, because when you have a narrow majority, you can lose four you can lose right now. So I want to talk about retribution or dark consequences for folks. I disagreed with the motion to vacate. 96% of our conference disagreed with the motion to vacate. 4% voted for this chaos. 100% of the Democrats voted for this chaos. So I think it's rich that you have Democrats throwing and look at, we're the adults.
Oh, by the way, this talking point that it's the Democrats' responsibility to that this is the Democrats' fault because sure, maybe just a few Republicans hadn't voted for Jim Jordan, but every single Democrat voted against Jim Jordan, and so the real architects of chaos here are the Democrats. It is not the Democrats' responsibility to save Republicans from themselves. Democrats' job is not to vote for a Republican speaker. It's not to swoop in and save the Republicans. The Republicans have a majority, just like the Democrats had a majority the last go-around. And they weren't looking to Republicans to vote for Nancy Pelosi, which, by the way, none of them did. And yet Democrats didn't turn around and say the Republicans are chaos agents because they're not voting for Nancy Pelosi. It is not the Republicans' job to vote for Democrats. It's not the Democrats' job to vote for Republicans, nor has it ever been. The Republicans campaigned for a majority. They ostensibly wanted a majority. They got a majority. The first order of business with a majority is to get your shit together, be grown-ass adults, coalesce around a speaker candidate, vote for them so that you can get on with the business of governing. If Republicans can't do that, if they can't accomplish the bare minimum that it takes to govern, maybe they shouldn't be in a majority. Maybe they shouldn't run to be in a majority. It is impossible that they can go out in this election cycle in 2024 and say, you should vote for us for the House after this fiasco where they can't do the bare minimum. We're not talking about rewriting the tax code here. We are talking about just electing a speaker so that they can move on with the business of doing literally anything else. This is like, forget about acing the SATs. We're just talking about putting your name on the damn thing. Forget about winning the Super Bowl. They can't pick a captain to go out and call heads or tails in the coin toss. Like this is the bare minimum we're talking about here. I think we have Hakeem Jeffries speaking right now.
In Gaza who may be in harm's way, and reach a spending agreement so we can keep the government open, avoid a shutdown, and continue to solve problems on behalf of everyday Americans. House Democrats continue to make clear that we are willing to find a bipartisan path forward so we can reopen the House and solve problems for hard-working American taxpayers. It's time for traditional Republicans to get off the sidelines, get in the arena, realize that the chaos, dysfunction, and extremism has to end, and the only way to do it is to figure out how we can partner in a bipartisan fashion to reopen the House and govern in a reasonable, common sense way. It's time for House Republicans to embrace bipartisanship and abandon extremism once and for all. That embrace bipartisanship and abandon extremism. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Leader. As we know, President Biden sent up this foreign aid package. How concerned are you about moving that forward, not just because of the lack of a speaker, but also given some Republican opposition to additional funding for Ukraine? And what kinds of conversations are you having now to try to shore up support so it's kind of ready to tee up whenever all this gets resolved?
Well, when the House reopens, I'm confident that the votes exist in combination between House Republicans and House Democrats to support a national security package to meet the needs of the American people and the free world. But we have to get the House reopened. Now, it's my expectation that the Senate will begin to act on President Biden's national security package sooner rather than later. But if the House is not reopened, then it will stall unnecessarily and lives will be jeopardized. This is a serious situation, which is why the chaos and the dysfunction has to come to an end. It's now my understanding that you have several extreme MAGA Republicans on the other side of the aisle who are saying they will only ever vote for Jim Jordan. And if that, in fact, is the case, it's an additional data point that there is only one way out, a bipartisan path forward to arrive at a reasonable arrangement to embrace common ground and common sense on behalf of the American people.
I take your point about the bipartisan path, but there's some school of thought that McHenry should just kind of try it out, see if he can put a resolution forward, see if the parliamentarian stops him. Do you think that that's a method that he should explore?
In the aftermath of the September 11th tragedy, this mechanism was put in place for the designation of an acting Speaker pro tem, whose sole responsibility was to organize the House in the context of a Speaker election. That was done under a House Republican majority with bipartisan votes on the Democratic side of the aisle as well. And so it's clear that Acting Speaker Pro Tem McHenry's authority is simply to preside over an election for a permanent speaker. The only other alternative is for the House to act together in a bipartisan way to elevate a Speaker Pro Tem. That doesn't have to be Patrick McHenry. There are many good men and women on the Republican side of the aisle who I believe are patriotic, they care about America, they care about our democracy, they care about the communities that they represent, who would be reasonable individuals to consider. But there's going to have to be a move on the Republican side of the aisle to make a decision to break with the extremists who are tearing the Republican conference apart. It's a mess on the other side of the aisle, and the problem is the American people are paying the price.
It goes without saying right now that the House is pretty dysfunctional. When a new speaker...
The House Republican Conference is dysfunctional. The House Democratic Caucus is unified.
When a new speaker is elected at some point, what is this dysfunction that you've been seeing vote? How does that vote for the ability to pass supplemental appropriation bills? Are you concerned about that?
Our message to our Republican colleagues is that we need to reopen the House so that we can do things like make sure there's child care funding for working families, middle-class families, and low-income families. We need to reopen the House so we can ensure that the affordable broadband connectivity program that provides access to people all across the country in urban America, rural America, suburban America, small-town America, the middle of America, the heartland of America, and Appalachia has access to affordable internet service. We need to reopen the House of Representatives so that we can provide additional disaster relief to Americans all across the country in blue states, purple states, and red states whose lives have been devastated by extreme weather events. We need to reopen the House to solve problems for hardworking American taxpayers. And House Democrats continue to say we are willing to do that in a bipartisan fashion because clearly the votes do not exist in the House Republican Conference alone to elect a speaker. House Republicans rejected McCarthy. House Republicans rejected Scalise. House Republicans rejected Jordan. House Republicans have apparently rejected McHenry. This can only be done in a bipartisan fashion. And we're serious about partnering with House Republicans in a reasonable way to do the business of the American people. Go back to this side, and then come back to you.
Thank you. Would House Democrat require concession from Congressman McHenry in order to elect him Speaker?
Yeah, we have not discussed concessions because our view is that we want a partnership in the best interest of the American people. That simply requires the House to reopen and function in a bipartisan way so that bills that we know have support from Republicans and Democrats get up or down votes on the House floor and can't be blocked by a marauding band of extremists on the hard right. That's all we want. That's a reasonable ask. Can we govern in a bipartisan way to solve problems for the American people? So it's not about the individual, it's about the interests of everyday Americans, it's about the integrity of our institution, which House Republicans have broken at this moment.
Two questions. One, have you heard from any Republicans today on this Joyce resolution or anything of the sort? Two, do you need a guarantee from them that they will bring the White House supplemental up for a vote before you guys support any kind of resolution like that?
Well, common sense suggests to me that if we are going to reopen the House, it should be done so that the pressing business of the American people is before us, and that would include the national security issues presented by President Biden for Congress's consideration so we can be there for Israel and its right to defend itself against Hamas's terror, for Ukraine and the courageous struggle to defeat Vladimir Putin and Russian aggression, for our allies in the Indo-Pacific, for Palestinian civilians who are in harm's way, and for other parts of the free world. It's also important that we reopen the House so that we can pass an end-of-year spending agreement that meets the needs of the American people, consistent with the Bipartisan Fiscal Responsibility Act that was passed at the end of May and negotiated by House Republicans with President Biden, with more than 300 members of the Congress supporting it in a bipartisan way. We're asking how.
By the way, I just want to break in here because we have some major news. Kenneth Chesbro, Donald Trump's former attorney and the architect for the fake elector scheme in Georgia, has decided to cooperate with prosecutors. So he's flipped, joining Sidney Powell, who also flipped in that Georgia prosecution in the Fulton County case. Both of them were paired together for a speedy trial set to start in 3 days on October 23rd. They've both agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. In exchange for that, they'll serve probation for a few years. Sidney Powell was ordered to pay a $6,000 fine. She's going to write a letter to the state of Georgia apologizing. But both of them have agreed to cooperate with prosecutors, meaning it's likely that we will see them cooperate against Donald Trump in this prosecution. So that's 2 defendants up, 2 defendants down. Both of them, were supposed to testify in just a few days from now, but both of them have opted to agree to cooperate with prosecutors here. So that is decidedly bad news for Donald Trump. So I'll have a video out about that shortly. I'll go back to Hakeem Jeffries now, but I figured it was worth it to break in and just let everybody know the good news if you are a fan of, our democracy. So that's what we're looking at right now. Again, if you want to stay on top of it or see that video as soon as that's released, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. And of course, I'll continue live streaming events like this one. So to see breaking news updates or to stay on live streams like this one, please make sure to subscribe. It does not cost you anything, but it's a great way to support what I do. So if you're not yet subscribed, please help me out and subscribe.
Democrats and Republicans having conversations with each other.
Does that involve leadership?
I have not had any conversations with the other side of the aisle. So a leader to talk to is going to have to emerge in order for that to occur.
At what point, if any, do you feel like you need to get involved in those conversations?
Well, the conversations that have been ongoing and in some ways have intensified throughout the week have been serious, and I've been briefed on every single one of them. And it involves different parts of the House Republican Conference because, as we can see on the House floor, there are different parts of the House Republican Conference who have rejected the extremism of Jim Jordan. And so conversations hopefully will intensify today, perhaps continue throughout the weekend, and get us to a place where we can reopen the House no later than Monday of next week.
You think
Thank you,
that's
everyone.
possible, sir?
It's possible.
Monday?
It's possible.
Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries there. We are learning along with all of you. You just heard him tell the American people that conversations have been happening behind the scenes, member to member, Republicans and Democrats, and that those conversations are intensifying about some sort of bipartisan path forward. As many of you may know, Congressman Joyce, a Republican, has a resolution that would give Patrick McHenry, the Speaker pro tem, temporary powers so that they could move legislation to the floor. Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader, telling reporters that a leader has to emerge for this conversation to continue to get more serious, for Democrats to have a conversation about whether or not they would support that idea. Now, Republicans, it's 12:36 here on the East Coast. Republicans are slated to meet behind closed doors for a family meeting at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We learned from reporters earlier that there is the possibility that Congressman Jim Jordan, who just lost his 3rd round of voting for Speaker, that Republicans tell us that they will vote in the closed-door meeting as to whether Jordan should remain the party's nominee for Speaker. And the Ohio Republican leaving the Capitol today was asked if he will go another round. He did not answer, only telling reporters, "We will meet in conference." Sakina, who has been waiting this whole time, listening to these members on the Capitol steps, and then the Democratic leader, a Republican from Columbia, Maryland. Let's get your reaction to what you just heard.
Well, it's very interesting. I think it's interesting that Matt Gaetz would actually have himself censored in order for Jordan to become Speaker. That's quite a plan. I'm very surprised to hear that. And also, Hakeem Jeffries, he continues to talk about bipartisanship, yet all of the Democrats just vote for him. So that kind of doesn't make any sense to me. If you want to have bipartisanship, they have to flip some of their votes also. So I'm
Sakina, he said, Sakina, the Democrats have been united behind Hakeem Jeffries and oppose.
Okay, so from here, what's happening now is that the Republican conference is meeting at 1 p.m., which is in about 20 minutes on the East Coast. We would expect them to decide at that point what they're going to do in terms of whether they're going to have a fourth vote today, whether Jim Jordan is going to stay in. I don't see a planet on which he decides to do that, seeing as the first vote was 20 votes against him, the second was 22, now we've got 25. You don't have to be a mathematician here to recognize that the trajectory is not in Jim Jordan's favor here. So I don't see a viable path forward for a Jim Jordan speakership, which is good news, by the way, if you're a fan of things like democracy. So there's that. What we'll see now is whether Republicans are going to come on board with this idea that they should empower Patrick McHenry, who is currently serving as the Speaker pro tem, to empower him to be able to stay on as Speaker in an interim basis, so maybe 30 days, maybe 60, maybe 90, it depends on what they land on, and then he would have the ability, if they grant him these powers, to pass certain budgets, for example, to be able to pass Ukraine aid or Israel aid. So they would determine like the scope of what he would be able to do and whether they'd be willing to grant him those powers for some short period of time. That would actually, I know that it seems like a capitulation by Jim Jordan, but it's not, because what that would effectively do is allow Jim Jordan to continue working over those holdouts behind the scenes. So I know that this seems like Jim Jordan, it's like a death knell to Jim Jordan, but it's not necessarily that, because, there's a lot of pressure on Jim Jordan right now with the momentum being against him. But if he has time, 30 days, for example, or 60 days, for example, to work on those holdouts and to exert more pressure on those holdouts, then rest assured that's exactly what he's going to do. So we'll see what happens on the Jim Jordan front. But right now they're going to be set to meet in about 20 minutes. If we have another speaker vote, I will absolutely bring it up on this live stream. So if you're not yet subscribed and you want to stay on top of all of this stuff, as soon as we have any news, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. It does not cost you anything. Just hit the subscribe button. You can also stay up to date on breaking news updates as well as interviews. I'll be interviewing Jamie Raskin this weekend, who is one of my favorite people on the planet. And I'm certain that he'll have some very interesting things to say about Jim Jordan and this doom loop that we're stuck in right now as we continue to vote after vote after vote in this failed effort by Republicans to do the bare minimum at governing and figure out a speaker so that they can do anything else besides this. Again, this is just the ultimate irony of having a party that came into office beating its chest, promising that they're the saviors of America, and yet they can't even basically do the equivalent of writing their name on the top of a test, much less acing it. So that's where we're at right now on the House conference side of things. So I think for right now, what I'll do is just go full on this C-SPAN link right here, and we can take it from there. But again, as soon as we have any news, I'll pop back in and we'll take it from there.
What would that moderate be? Do you have a name?
I cannot come up with a name, but I will tell you there is a committee that works together to solve problems in the House between Republicans and Democrats. Perhaps a Republican that sits on that committee.
Well, I'll give you a name then,
by the way,
because
I feel
the
like
co-chair of the
I should
Problem
explain
Solvers Caucus
that I also just want to eat
is
food. I've been doing this live stream
Representative
for
Fitzpatrick
since
from
6:30 in the morning
Pennsylvania,
West Coast time,
and he
so
voted
a little hungry.
twice
So that's why
in the first two rounds of
that's
voting
why I'm not being a
for,
team player right now and
Jim
sticking
Jordan.
with this. But I am
He
going to go
then
get some food,
flipped,
and as soon as we have
that's
any
Brian
news,
Fitzpatrick,
I'll come back
Republican of Pennsylvania.
and
He
give it to you.
flipped today, and he voted for voted for Patrick McHenry, the Speaker pro tem, making him the first lawmaker today to flip their vote away from Jordan on this round. This is from the Hill newspaper, and the 9th to vote against the Ohio Republican. Jake Sherman noting again for all of you that in about 20 minutes, Republicans will go behind closed doors to decide, does Jim Jordan continue or not? Alexander in St. Augustine, Florida, Republican. Hello, Alexander.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be talking to you on C-SPAN. I just want to start off by saying right now I am ashamed to call myself a Republican. I feel that the party is lurched away from the mainstream, and we have people like Jim Jordan who is seen as the best choice for the party. Obviously now a lot of Republicans are feeling otherwise, and there's a look for more moderate representation, but I don't believe that's there. I'll have to look into the name that you said, but the Republican Party has quite frankly become the party of Trump. And I feel like our values as a party have just been tarnished by Donald Trump and his agenda. Most Republicans nowadays, I would say, they're not Republicans, they're Trumpists. It's kind of become a cult of personality, and we're seeing that now with the speaker race. And with the Speaker of the House being vacant, we've seen kind of inaction in Congress, and we've seen inaction in Congress long before that. But nothing's happening. No votes are being done. And I believe that the longest vacancy in the United States history of a Speaker of the House was 18 days. And right now we're sitting at 17, meaning 2 more days. And this will make history if it has not already.
Well,
so I am quite displeased.
All right. Well, and Alexander, a lot of history has been made in this Congress and in this year. Reporters noting that this is the 18th roll call vote held in alphabetical order by name for a speaker. 18th vote this year, Alexander.
Wow. Yeah, the whole Kevin McCarthy thing was kind of a joke too, but I won't get into that. But It's been a pleasure talking to you.
All right, Dennis, in Florida, Independent. Hi, Dennis.
Howdy.
Hi, Dennis.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was basically a lifelong Republican, flipped over to Independent. I always voted for the best person. I left the Republican Party because of the idiocy that's going on. Like today, they can't get their stuff together. They seem to be more radical. I won't vote Democratic because they give away the country, throw the borders open. Politics in the United States today is in the worst situation I've seen in my 75 years around this world.
Some more from the vote. Olivia Beavers for Politico. 3 new no votes today, and 2 Jordan supporters did not vote who were here yesterday. Those Democrats were Representatives the Republicans were Representatives Hunt and Van Orden. They were not here today for the vote. Not as many new no votes as some of my anti-Jordan GOP sources predicted. They had said that there would be an additional 5 to 8 no votes on this 3rd round of voting, but there were 3 additional. Payne and Vicente Gonzalez missed the vote on the Democratic side. So those were the 2 Democrats that were missing. Hakeem Jeffries, as you all know, in each round of voting has secured all 212 of his Democratic colleagues. Today, that number was 210 because those 2 members were missing. Bruce, Portland, Oregon, Democratic caller.
Hi, man. Thank you for taking my call. At first, it was kind of laughable with the McCarthy thing. But now, it's really getting out of hand. These people need to figure it out. And I just hope that, the American voters see this, that, these people in the GOP, they say they care about people. They don't care about people. Because if they cared about people, 17 days ago, they would have had a speaker. I mean, this is nonsense. I hope that we can get a speaker. I hope something. If McHenry doesn't want it, how about somebody, the guy, I believe, I'm not sure what his name is, but he's from Oklahoma. He's an older guy.
Tom Cole.
I don't know.
Bruce, I think you're thinking of Tom Cole.
Yeah, Tom Cole. I mean, he seems to get along with everybody. So I don't know. I just hope and pray that these people can, figure this out, because this is embarrassing. I mean, we're getting laughed at around the world, And I just thank you for taking my call.
All right, Bruce. Yeah, Ian Swanson, who covers Capitol Hill, reports at 12:02, right after that vote. Kevin McCarthy, seconds after Jordan loses and a couple of hours after he gave his nominating speech, says that that's a question for Jim when asked if Jordan should drop out. He calls this quite a shift coming from the former speaker. Patrick in Indiana, Republican. Oh, we'll go on to Annabelle in Sterling Heights, Michigan. Hi, Annabelle.
Hi. Yeah, so I've been watching the speaker votes throughout the week on the neoliberal subreddit on Reddit and then through C-SPAN, and I just don't see a way out of this, because the problem is Jordan is a House Freedom Caucus guy, and establishment Republicans and just normal Republicans aren't going to support that. There is no path for him to gain more votes. He's just losing more and more. The only candidate from the Republican Party I could have seen possibly winning, the only two, are McCarthy and Scalise. I genuinely just don't see anyone else who can possibly win this. So at this point, for me, the best option now is some sort of consensus candidate, because McHenry, obviously, he was talking about setting a precedent, so he's not going to run. But it's a huge mess, and I don't see any way out of it at this point.
Okay. Annabelle's thoughts there in Michigan. The Hill newspaper noting that Representative Mark Molinaro, a Republican of New York, is the third Republican today to flip their vote away from Jordan, joining several fellow New York moderates in voting for former Representative Lee Zeldin. John, Pooler, Georgia, Democratic caller. Hi, John.
How you doing? Thanks for taking my call. I think what the Democrats should do is just make a deal with the moderates. Just ask 5 or 6 of them to come on over, put Jeffries as the speaker, because the Republicans, this is just a clown show. I realize Nancy Mace on the Capitol step complaining about the threats and all what's going on. All this stuff started under Donald Trump. So Trump is the reason for the position that we're in right now. And I think the Democrats should get together with 5 or 6 Republicans and just say, hey, you know what? I'll offer you this chairmanship. Give them something. Give them something to make him speaker. And I think because the country has to move forward. We cannot stay stagnant. And the only way to do that is to put Hakeem Jeffries as a speaker. Get some Republicans to come on over and join them. Thank you.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned, Nancy Mace was on the Capitol steps, and she was one of the 8 Republicans who ousted Kevin McCarthy from the speakership. The 8 have now written a letter to their colleagues, and Olivia Beavers with the reporting. The 8 who voted to oust McCarthy call for members to elect Jim Jordan, defending their vote. And you heard from Matt Gaetz, Bob Good, Eli Crane, Tim Burchett on the Capitol steps earlier saying, if they need a pound of our flesh, we'll give it. They can kick us out of the conference and we'll lose our committee spots. They can center us on the House floor. They're willing to do that in exchange for Jim Jordan as Speaker. Betty in Foley, Alabama, independent. Hi, Betty.
Hi. First of all, Jim Jordan needs to step aside. It doesn't appear to be getting any better. He's his type personality and everything. There are people that are just not going to vote for him, or his policies, or so he needs to step aside, and there needs to be some other consensus. So number 2, the 8 people, Gates and 8 people. That's a joke that they're getting more attention now by this offer, and there's plenty of people that are voting against Jim Jordan that aren't just wanting to punish him, and they're just wanting to get their person elected.
And you have, and I'll just jump
ridiculous.
in to say you have people like Kay Granger, who's the chair of the Appropriations Committee, that she is voting against Jim Jordan because of his record on the government shutdown and appropriations bills.
That they're doing that, they shut the whole thing down by voting against McCarthy when he had, 8 people. He should have never been ousted. That's a clear majority. And the Democrats need to put their big boy britches on and accept responsibility that they voted to oust him also. So they're partly to blame, too. There's plenty of blame to go around. They're not so it's just ridiculous. But I know, and I don't think I'm not embarrassed. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of personalities, and we just need to go on.
All right. Betty there in Independent, Foley, Alabama. Again, those 3 additional no votes on the Republican side came from Mark Molinaro, Republican of New York. This is the Hill newspaper. He flipped today from being a Jordan supporter on this 3rd vote to voting for Lee Zeldin, who's a former member of Congress from New York. And then you had Brian Fitzpatrick, a Republican of Pennsylvania. He too flipped after 2 votes for Jordan today, moving away from the Ohio Republican. And you also had Eric Wasson with this tweet: vulnerable New Jersey Republican Tim Kaine flipping against Jordan. All 3 of those Republicans are in challenging districts, in swing districts. Let's go to Gabe, who's in Franklin, North Carolina. Democrat. Actually, Gabe, hold on. We're going to listen into George Santos, who's talking to reporters on his way into this Republican meeting.
It's time to consider a different candidate?
I think that's up to Jim Jordan. If he thinks it's time for him to step down, that's on him. I still support him. I think he should stay in, and I think the conversation should be had. But it comes down to the point of, if we don't have a real family conversation, the tough ones we have on Thanksgiving dinner, that's what needs to happen in there. Not shouting, not screaming, no disrespect, just asking the real questions that I don't think have been asked all the last 2 weeks. All right, thanks, guys. Thank you.
All right, George Santos there on his way into the Republican meeting. We'll see if we can hear from more of them as they make their way behind closed doors. Gabe, though, in Franklin, North Carolina, Democratic caller, thanks for waiting.
Thank you. I think it's a little funny to hear George Santos lecture us about anything. I think that they should go with empowering McHenry. I think he has shown himself to be have connections with both the fire breathers and the more moderate wing. I think if you could get some of the New York Republicans, maybe some of the California Republicans to go along with the Democrats, you could maybe come to a power sharing agreement.
All right, Gabe, and we heard your point, but you're a little muffled, so I'm going to leave it there. Let's listen to Ralph Norman.
So we'll see.
But it doesn't seem like that's what this is about for a lot of them, that they're more opposed to him in principle and that they're profoundly opposed to him, as Mr. Womack said.
And we're profoundly supportive of Mr. Jordan. We're profoundly, his record shows he's been true to his word. He's a true conservative. So everyone's got an opinion, but we're strongly voting for Jordan. I told him that on the floor. He's got a path to victory, and just keep voting until we get there. And let the American people see what's going on here. Stand up like we're doing and casting your vote.
But are you worried the map is just straight up not going in his direction?
How many rounds did it take for McCarthy? He lost before he took 15. He lost before he actually got it.
McCarthy always gained in votes every round.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. On the 7th or 8th vote, he lost a good many, but he came back up.
Is there any potential, of the resolution to give Speaker Pro Tem McHenry power? That's still dead.
That's dead.
In conference?
Unless they resurrect it today.
Okay. And you haven't heard that yet?
Have not. I hope they don't.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mary.
Ralph Norman, Republican of South Carolina, and you heard him repeat what we've heard from other conservatives today after this 3rd round of voting failed, which is keep going. That Kevin McCarthy won after 15 rounds, and they think that Jim Jordan, should keep pushing, and that he will pick up as the voting continues round after round. Let's get your reaction to that idea. Ken in Fort Smith, Arkansas, a Republican. What do you think? Should Jim Jordan keep pushing for more votes?
I think a certain number of rounds is reasonable, but I'm not sure if that's 5 or 15. You had a caller earlier that said Jordan should apologize, and then people could respect him enough to vote for him, and I think that's ludicrous. Jordan has his head so far up the radical Republican MAGA that he cannot be extracted. I actually liked Jordan until he became a member of this misbegotten committee, and he can't make a finding, nor is he smart enough to terminate the committee. How is he going to lead the House? I think the House leads like a constitutional amendment or a rules change, such that after a number of votes, each side picks 10 members that are removed from the representatives, and then they can go on. And those people can't be reelected, and you simply run with a smaller amount. Companies do that. I forget what the programs are called. They're not Six Sigma, but they eliminate the most radical, poorest performers, and then they go on. And I think maybe the House needs some such rule.
All right. Happening during the vote, this is an image captured by the Associated Press. Here is Representative Greg Steube, a Republican of Florida, who voted for Jim Jordan, holding a resolution on the House floor to remove Representative Patrick McHenry as temporary Speaker. It has several pages of signatures, he notes, removing Patrick McHenry as temporary Speaker. You heard other conservatives like Matt Gaetz and Bob Good praising the role that Patrick McHenry has been playing over the last 17 days, but they do not want to give him additional powers. Any resolution to do so, they would vote against it. Deneen in Golden Valley, Arizona, Republican.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Hi. I think that this whole thing has a good side and a bad side. The bad side is that Jordan did not get voted in. But the good side is that until he is, they can't spend any more money. And I'm really sick and tired of our open borders and all the money going out to Ukraine and other countries. So I think that it's a good win for Americans, because as long as they cannot spend more money, we're in a better place any day. Thank you, and God bless you.
Okay, Deneen in Golden Valley, Arizona. On a lighter note, here is an image that was put out by Lauren Boebert on X, a picture of her and Jim Jordan ahead of the vote. She's saying, "I'll keep voting for Jim Jordan until he runs out of yellow ties and blue shirts." She says it's going to be a while. She decided to dress today in a similar fashion that Jim Jordan is fond of. Pamela in New Jersey, Democratic caller.
Hi. I am so happy you took my call. Thank you so much for listening. What I'd like to say is, I don't understand why Republicans think that Democrats in the House should run to salvage them. We have never been helped by the Republicans when we're short votes. Why do they think we should do it? Secondly, I don't understand why so many Republicans believe that money is a problem. In the United States of America, we're the richest country in the world. Why is it that they're so concerned with how much money is spent when it comes to something that's helpful, and don't have a clue when it's not? They help the rich out. How about helping the middle class out?
All right, Pamela's thoughts in New Jersey. We're going to end the conversation there for now. Thank you all for watching and having a conversation with us today. Right now, we're going to bring you back to earlier in the day when the former Speaker Kevin McCarthy gave the nomination speech for Representative Jim Jordan.
House will come to order. Nominations are now in order. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. McCarthy.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to nominate Jim Jordan for the Speaker of the House. Now, I've listened to the speeches this week, and I can already tell you what my friends on the other side will say using their poll-tested phrases. But let me correct the record. Jim Jordan is an effective legislator. To legislate is about more than the name on the bill. It's about reaching compromise and working long hours behind the scenes to get the job done.
The House will come to order. Gentlemen may resume.
When you are the chairman of a committee, you are responsible for dozens of bills passing the House and being signed into law. So let me tell you a few facts that don't come
for everybody watching right now. This is just them going back and replaying old footage from before. The House is currently in recess right now, and we will have news soon as to whether the House is going to come back for a vote or whether they're going to be adjourning for today. But the House is currently in recess. As of a couple of minutes ago, the Republicans got together for a conference meeting, or what they call a family meeting. And look, we've seen dysfunctional families before, but this one would really take the cake. So again, we'll see right now in short order what's going to happen in terms of Jim Jordan presenting his name again as a speaker candidate. There have been a number of Republicans who've come forward and said, absolutely not. There's nothing that you can do to gain our votes. We are completely obstinate in our opposition to Jim Jordan. It ain't happening. So the likelihood that Jim Jordan is going to come forward by presenting himself as a candidate again, at least today, is very unlikely. If I had to guess, I would say that we're most likely to see some type of resolution empowering Patrick McHenry, who's currently serving as the Speaker pro tem, to be able to bring forward, to be able to be acting or interim speaker for, 30, 60, 90 days, something like that. And he would be empowered to deal with matters related to the budget, related to foreign aid. And in the meantime, it's not like, by the way, that's some capitulation for Jim Jordan, because in the meantime, it would allow Jim Jordan to continue lobbying those holdouts behind the scenes. So again, this is not necessarily a reason to breathe a sigh of relief if this Patrick McHenry situation happens, because Jim Jordan, as the election denier that he is, will continue to deny the results of this election here and barrel forward with his efforts to become the next Republican speaker. So we will see. We'll see what the news is as soon as we have it. I think what I'm going to do right now is probably end this live, and as soon as we have new information, I'll do another live stream. If we don't have any news today, if there's not going to be another vote today, then there won't be another live stream. But in the meantime, I'll just keep a close eye on things, and if we have any new news, so long as you're subscribed to this channel, you should get an email in your inbox letting you know as soon as I do go live. If I go live, that means we have big news. That means that we are going to have another speaker vote, or we have some major news related to the speaker vote. So I'll end this stream now. Again, please make sure to subscribe to this channel to stay on top of everything as it relates to this speaker election. It'll also give you some insight into what I'm doing in terms of breaking news, in terms of interviews, my legal breakdown series where I talk about all these prosecutions that are happening right now, including the fact that another co-defendant in the Fulton County case, Kenneth Chesbrough, just flipped. So I'm going to have a video out on that shortly, and you can see my full coverage on that. So please make sure to subscribe. It does not cost you anything. Best way to support what I do and to also stay on top of live streams like the one that I just had this morning. So thank you so much for watching. I know you can choose from a different array of sources, so I really appreciate you tuning in here. And again, as soon as we have any news, I'll come back. But with that said, we'll end it for now, and thank you again.